Lord of Mysteries. Survival from the Secret Doll Chapter 201 to 210. He's still not dead after being blasted like that. Tang lowered the brim of his hat and looked behind the other party. As a Sequence 2 who already possessed a complete mythical creature form, he wasn't really afraid of Amn's mythical creature form anymore. However, the current state of the Giant King's court was special. That explosion just now might trigger the problem of the evil spirit of the Dark Angel Sazlier in advance. The Chaos Sea now is actually not very much under the control of the ancient sun god or Atom. The actual manipulator of the evil spirit of the Dark Angel Sazlier is very likely to be that one after the initial personality split. And that one is also unwilling for a Lord of the Mysteries to be born. In a situation where the strengths of both sides are seriously out of balance, it is not difficult to guess that he will take action to restore the balance. The higher the sequence, the more dangerous it is. This is not only aimed at Amon, but also at every extraordinary being who approaches the underground. Amon is using the Giant King's court as his backup. He should have considered the corresponding problems beforehand. He's really hard to kill. Moreover, this is the blasphemer's last desperate counterattack. Compared to 300 years ago, when the future him killed Amon, not only did Klein interfere, directly and forcibly interrupting Amon from borrowing power, but he also fought an intelligence war. Amon didn't know his situation at all, so he naturally couldn't guard against many things. Now, Amon knows some of his information, and has entered the Giant King's court, and has been blasted into this ghostly appearance. The timing, the location, and the people are all in place, all indicating that Amon's next counterattack will be the most violent and the most dangerous. The most troublesome aspect of such a plan is that if Amon determines that he cannot get rid of the entanglement, then he will also take everyone with him to be buried with him. It is not difficult to see from the original text that Amon is a guy who cherishes his life, but that situation was because Klein, who became the fool, was even crazier, completely showing the attitude of, Amon, if you don't let me have a good time, then everyone shouldn't have a good time. That kind of pulling everyone to be buried with him, the madness of, rather let the original Lord of the Mysteries be resurrected than let Amon become the Lord of the Mysteries, really scared Amon. This allowed Klein to seize the opportunity, turn defeat into victory, and achieve the birth of the Lord of the Mysteries. And now, Amon is standing in Klein's position, and he is standing in Amon's position. Having determined that he cannot get rid of it, and that he is very likely to lose even the only remaining Sequence 1 extraordinary characteristic, Amon will obviously make a decision to maximize his interests. Facts have proved that Tang's prediction of the future has not deviated. Destiny is forcing Amon to death on this path. This blasphemer, who has survived from ancient times to the present, slowly walked out of that riddled room. Behind him was a spreading, strange shadow that seemed to encompass the entire world. The shadow wriggled and changed, forming a vast ocean that seemed to be submerged underground. Just seeing it caused people's brains to crash, as if they were in a chaotic world. Behind that shadow, there seemed to be an eye, silently spying on the whereabouts of the outside world. The Dark Angel, the evil spirit of Sazlier, has awakened. When Nicholas transformed into a clock, with several mottled hands protruding from the gray and cyan clock. Amon's figure, and the darkness surging outwards behind him like a tide, were somewhat stagnant, seemingly shocked by the power of time, but soon, both of them broke free from the limitations of the Time Worm's ability. Nicholas bought a little time. Tang was already prepared. He exerted force with both arms, dragging something huge from the gaps in history, wanting to pull that thing out of the history originating from the future and descend into the real world. But in the next second, the connection between the fog of history and the real world was severed. Amon, with a head full of eyes and mouths, slightly curled the corners of his mouth again. It's a pity this body can't be used anymore, otherwise, I should be able to see something more interesting. His voice gradually lowered, and at the same time, the black and dark in his eyes, looking at Tang and Nicholas' eyes, became more indifferent. Something terrifying is gradually recovering, replacing Amon's consciousness. This angel, who has survived from ancient times to the present, has given up suppressing the will of the heavenly Lord of Good Fortune remaining in the potion in his body, allowing the will of the heavenly Lord of Good Fortune to initially recover. The shadow that was constantly spreading outwards from the palace now enveloped the entire Twilight Hall, not only interfering with the connection between the fog of history and here, but also severing the connection between the Euclidean space and the projections of the lower dimensions. The projected images of Tang and Nicholas flickered, like a channel with a bad signal. In the next second, the two of them walked out of the sufficiently safe Euclidean space together, stepping directly into the giant king's court with their true selves, facing the sea that seemed to encompass everything and the obviously mutated Amon. In fact, retreating directly at this time would be the best choice. But this also means that the heavenly Lord of Good Fortune has come alive, which will pose an undisguised threat to Tang and Nicholas, the angels of the seer and thief pathways. Following the instinctive law of aggregation between extraordinary characteristics, the will of the original Lord of the Mysteries will inflict unpredictable blows on all high-ranking beings of the thief, seer, and apprentice pathways. Although it is highly probable that the God will intervene in the resurrection of the Lord of the Mysteries, the problem is that the extraordinary characteristics of the thief pathway cannot fall here, at least not in the giant king's court, here with the evil spirit of the dark angel Saslier. That would lead to too many variables. If it is left here, when Adam and the true creator are ready, they can completely take away this time worm extraordinary characteristic and return it to Amon again. The true creator is in the land of the abandoned by God. He may be observing the situation of the giant king's court in a special way. After confirming that he has been forced away, perhaps in the next moment he will take away this extraordinary characteristic and give it to one of Amon's Sequence 2 avatars, allowing him to return to the position of Sequence 1 again. In this way, everything will be a waste of effort. Phew! Tang exhaled, easing the tension in his heart. Immediately afterwards, he reached deep into the void and yanked back hard. Something swiftly emerged from it and descended into the real world. The eyes that cracked open on Amon's face were filled with things that could not be described in words. Behind him, in that room, the darkness was still thick, as if it contained the chaotic ocean that harbored all things, and gradually rippled. Tang took a step back, Nicholas pinched his monocle, and the gaze behind the monocle gradually became empty and devoid of spirituality. This Sequence 1 angel took the initiative to turn off the bionic puppet module on his body to prevent the module itself from becoming corrupted and causing him to develop a will of betrayal. Nicola Flamel's spirit body threads returned to his secret puppet master, and at the same time, something had already emerged from the fog of history and stepped into the real world. The Chaos Sea and the initial revival of the celestial worthy of good fortune, high heavens, one could shield the overlapping parts of the fog of history and the real world, while the other was the master of the spirit world, both possessing considerable restraint against the extraordinary abilities of the Seer Pathway Sequence 3, Ancient Scholar. However, the historical void image that Tang pulled originated from the future, a kind of interference from the future, upon the past, belonging to the fog of history, yet not belonging to it, and was not within the scope of influence of the initially awakened celestial worthy of good fortune, high heavens. Although Euclidean space was shielded, certain characteristics were radiating and spreading outward from Tang, who appeared in this space, as an anchor point, which was also his greatest reliance. Tang's connection with Euclidean space was very strong, and the dissipated power of the Chaos Sea was not enough to completely conceal this connection. He pulled out the scene of his initial contact with Euclidean space, his contact with the future. Nicola raised his right hand and attempted to steal from Amon in front of him, at the cost of his own state becoming abnormal, using determinacy and the uniqueness of the thief pathway to steal the fate that originally belonged to Amon. The aura of deathly silence and strangeness permeated wildly, and the dark and cold mausoleum was highly overlapping with the real world. Brilliant crystals scattered in this special scene. Nicola took a step forward and actively stepped into the scene pulled out by Tang. There, in the narrow mausoleum, the youth in the high sky cast his gaze down, his indifferent eyes reflecting Nicola Flamel's current appearance. He raised his hand, and the dark golden scepter in his hand reflected the time worm who had stolen Amon's uncontrolled fate. The most uptack new uptack small uptack say uptack is uptack in uptack first uptack hair. The indifferent gaze of the celestial worthy of good fortune, high heavens, who appeared in the cold mausoleum, looked towards the top of his head. There, on the youth sitting high above,
countless spirit body threads also emerged in his eyes.
In the next moment, the huge feathered serpent suddenly raised its head and looked at the youth and Nicola Flamel. On the human-faced face of this huge feathered serpent, in the eye sockets burning with pale flames, Nicola Flamel's specific appearance was reflected at some point. Under the feathered serpent, from the illusory river, one arm after another suddenly stretched out. They grabbed Nicola Flamel's body, seemingly trying to drag this time worm into the illusory and layered river. The Supreme cast his gaze. He observed your determinacy. Your determinacy is, in a death where even death is bound, sink into the bottom of the river forever. After Nicola entered the scene from that historical void, Tang snapped his fingers. I hope my spirituality can recover quickly. After the miracle occurred, he quickly continued to snap his second finger. I hope that Amon, without ego consciousness, can be killed, and his extraordinary characteristics can be quickly extracted. As someone who had once killed Amon, who possessed uniqueness, at the Sequence 4 level, this miracle was now grafted onto him in a strange and ingenious way, forming an accumulated miracle. Amon, whose fate had been stolen, his constantly opening and closing mouth and eyes looked at Tang together, and behind this time worm, whose consciousness had been completely occupied by the celestial worthy of good fortune, was a man wearing a black robe embroidered with silver thread, with black illusory wings drooping behind him. That was the left hand of God, the vice deity of heaven, the dark angel, Sazlier. Tang's gaze fell on this dark angel evil spirit holding the first blasphemy slate, and then he took out an item in his hand. That was a severed hand belonging to Mr. Door. The dark angel Salier's gaze first fell on that seemingly extremely strange scene, and then it fell on Tang, who took out the severed hand. This angel, created by the ancient sun god with a rib, slightly nodded to Tang. Tang pressed down on the severed hand in his hand, and then, large expanses of the sea of stars appeared behind Amon, and in front of the dark angel Sazlier. Amon's body seemed to have a tendency to disintegrate at this moment. The surrounding rich darkness suddenly swept over, wanting to completely devour this endless sea of stars, but Nicola Flamel, who was in the surge of the tributary of the river of eternal darkness, suddenly raised his head. He pinched his monocle, and the chaotic ocean that seemed to encompass the entire world suddenly stopped, seemingly having been stolen, and the thoughts it should have possessed were stolen. God doesn't want the Lord of the Mysteries to be resurrected, so he took action to help Amon and prevent this extraordinary characteristic of the time worm from falling into my hands. Similarly, for his own resurrection, the Lord of the Mysteries would definitely hold back God and let this time worm's extraordinary characteristic fall into Tang's hands. The more aggregated, the higher the possibility of the Lord of the Mysteries resurrecting. How could the celestial worthy of good fortune, high heavens, let go of this opportunity? Using the severed hand left by Mr. Door, and the high-level theft done by the celestial worthy of good fortune, Tang's figure appeared in front of Amon, who had been hollowed out by the celestial worthy of good fortune. This former angel king, who had suffered extreme nuclear radiation pollution and chaos sea pollution once again, his body had become extremely dilapidated. A hole was broken in the black pointed soft hat, and numerous cracks appeared in the monocle worn in his left eye socket. But just as Tang approached him, wanting to use the authority of miracles to directly extract the extraordinary characteristics and then leave directly, the mouth on the original position of this former angel king suddenly slightly curled up at the corner. Surprise! Tang's hair stood on end all at once. He felt a consciousness in his body that did not belong to him. Celestial worthy of good fortune, high heavens? Tang quickly realized what this consciousness that did not belong to him was. Amon was not completely dead. He used the authority of theft to give himself the consciousness of the celestial worthy of good fortune, high heavens, which he had deliberately hidden and which Nicola had not stolen. All aggregation must be separated, all separation must be aggregated. I really want to see, at that time, whether you can become the Lord of the Mysteries. Tang's eyes became extremely dark, but without any emotion. His hand pierced into the other party's heart position, and with the surge of the power of miracles, a still beating, bright red heart was directly dug out by him and thrown into the system warehouse. That was the last extraordinary characteristic belonging to the Thief Pathway Sequence 1. With the final extraordinary characteristic of the sequence 1 thief pathway taken away, the purpose of this attack on Amon could be considered complete. However, Tang paid a heavy price to obtain this last extraordinary characteristic of the time worm. I still underestimated Amon, the god of deceit, too much. He had already considered what to do after being caught by me. Even if he self-destructed, he would drag me down with him.
The star sea was being eroded by a sea of chaos. The dark angel Sorcerer, an evil spirit gradually emerging from behind the veil of shadows, looked towards Tang through this gradually eroding barrier. His eyes were indifferent, devoid of emotion, as if staring at insignificant ants. His calm voice gradually rose.
The original will awaken within you. Tang's eyes became even more profound and obscure, as if hiding a bottomless ocean. He looked at this evil spirit, a mix of the ancient sun god's malice and the pollution of the Chaos Sea, and reached out his hand.
Tang had no intention of attacking this dark angel evil spirit. His condition was constantly deteriorating, and the consciousness of God within the dark angel Sorcerer evil spirit was obviously much more active than it would be 1,000 years later. It couldn't be resolved in just 1 or 2 moves.
The first blasphemy slate isn't something I desperately need right now either. I'll find another opportunity in the future. With Tang's action, in the next instant, irregular traces, like glass being cut, appeared in the space between the Dark Angel and Tang. In the next moment, the two were in different dimensional planes, unable to influence each other through ordinary means.
Euclidean space completely enveloped the polluted area of the Giant King's court, sealing it off in terms of spatial dimensions, preventing Sorcerer from using the power of the Chaos Sea to interfere with his departure for a short time. This kind of blockade couldn't last too long. There was a strong mystical connection between the Chaos Sea and the first blasphemy slate. This connection wouldn't be easily blocked by Euclidean space, just as the Chaos Sea couldn't easily block the connection between him and Euclidean space. Having suffered Amon's desperate counterattack, Tang, carrying the spoils of the time worm's extraordinary characteristic, gradually faded away, entering a high-dimensional space, and leaving the Giant King's court. The gazes cast from the void left with Tang, no longer paying attention to this place. The Dark Angel Sorcerer evil spirit just watched the extraordinary being who killed Amon disappear before his eyes, without any intention of stopping him.
The Star Sea, due to Mr. Door's severed hand leaving, was also gradually disintegrating.
Subsequently, the gaze of this left hand of God, the Vice Monarch of Heaven, fell on the historical void image that was still in a state of maintenance. Beneath the giant feathered serpent, Nicholas Flamel walked out of the illusory river that seemed to contain all the colors of the world. This angel, who had stolen Amon's fate, pinched the monocle in his right eye socket and silently confronted the Dark Angel evil spirit for a few seconds. Afterward, Nicholas, the time worm, smiled silently, glanced back at the youth located high behind him, and his figure gradually faded away, following his seer of secrets, and left the Giant King's court.
At this moment, this place seemed to fall into a deathly stillness once again.
Silently, the illusory ocean that seemed to encompass the entire world did not recede. The Dark Angel evil spirit seemed to be waiting for something. He waited quietly until the scene that only existed within the historical void image collapsed, and the youth with a 3-meter-long scepter walked out of that scene and entered reality.
A faint light seemed to flash in the calm eyes of the Dark Angel evil spirit. Within the Euclidean space corresponding to the never-ending theater, one sticky tentacle after another slid out of Tang's body, and unknown, great consciousnesses sent unintelligible voices to his spiritual body.
That was magnificent, layered, crazy, and irresistible spiritual pollution. Just suppressing it made Tang feel a deep sense of powerlessness. The revival of the Heavenly Lord of Good Fortune, under Amon's leadership, would inevitably have an irresistible impact on his mental state. Need any help? Nicholas Flamel asked, standing beside Tang, whose anchor point was playing a far smaller role than the awakening consciousness of the Heavenly Lord and who was clearly unable to effectively suppress the Heavenly Lord's consciousness, which had already begun to awaken. No, Tang's voice began to become sticky and greasy, as if the spirit worms in his mouth had also undergone uncontrollable mutations, making his voice extremely strange. What about the other Amons? He asked vaguely. Those Sequence 2 avatars are hiding. It seems that the true creator and Atom made a move. You know, one cannot directly look at a god, and Adam's corpse cathedral is also a very special thing. I can't see through it. Nicholas said. As for the other avatars, they seem to be very normal. Amon's main body should have changed as well, but I don't know which fate Trojan horse it is. Amon's grade had fallen to sequence 2. If there were no accidents, this former king of angels would find it extremely difficult to return to the throne of sequence 1. Just as Tang was about to say something, many more slippery tentacles appeared on his body. His thoughts were gradually becoming chaotic. He felt as if he was about to sink into a gray-white mist, combining with the countless rays of light within it, stripping away all humanity, and allowing some terrifying ritual to awaken. He was somewhat struggling, but he said calmly, "To be honest, to be able to kill Amon so smoothly, and in the end, he just gave me a great gift package of Heavenly Lord awakening, is already a great deal.
I thought he would have Adam and the true creator, cough cough, fight me on the arena."
Nicholas dragged the bottom edge of his monocle with his finger joints and said his guess. Perhaps it's not that he doesn't want to, but that Adam and the true creator don't want to. Just like that one once said, these are all necessary sacrifices.
Necessary sacrifices, huh, sacrificing an Amon to achieve the birth of the Lord of the Mysteries. Tang sighed, and then his expression became distorted again. I think, I should take a nap, huff. This feeling is really not good. The Heavenly Lord's consciousness is really hard to suppress. I think I should sleep for another 300 years. Nicholas glanced at Tang, then pinched his monocle and said, "Don't mess around." In the next moment, the countless mutated tentacles that were constantly twisting on Tang's body were frozen in place. His expression was lifelike, even the pain, struggle, and madness were vividly displayed. No one could doubt that this was Tang Eggers Ramde himself. But even such a living person was now being subjected to the powerful suppression of Euclidean space. Countless brilliant rays of light gathered around him, constantly wrapping him up and sealing the interior. This wasn't Tang intentionally sealing himself off to suppress the awakening of the blessed heavenly worthies while using Euclidean space. A young man emerged from the completely mutated Tang, as if suddenly transitioning from an unobservable state to an observable one, appearing out of nowhere and walking to Nicholas's side. He looked exactly like the Tang, who was undergoing mutation and showing signs of pain. And this young man, like Amon after watching a good show, revealed a smile. Although I don't know if Adam saw through it, Amon was clearly deceived as well. Ah, isn't this a bit too coincidental? Tang carefully examined the Tang, who was collapsing under the will of the blessed heavenly worthy, his body covered in slippery tentacles, and couldn't help but click his tongue in amazement. Deceiving the god of deception. If I were an angel of the seer pathway, I should have completely digested the potion by now. Amon deceived me, and I deceived Amon. That's fair, isn't it? Nicholas looked at this newly promoted miracle inventor and asked, "When did you start using the marionette?" Guess. Tang glanced at Nicholas Flamel, who had stolen Amon's uncontrolled fate but now behaved no differently from a normal marionette. Then, he looked at the marionette covered in slippery tentacles, gradually going mad, and transforming towards the blessed heavenly worthy. He said with a smile, "One of the acting principles of a marionette master is to keep me behind the scenes." What marionette master personally performs on stage? In the previous performances, if it weren't because the number and level of the marionettes themselves were insufficient, he wouldn't have had to perform himself. If he encountered something messy, wouldn't he become a clown? Just like this time, the face of Tang began to wriggle constantly, revealing a slightly pale and thin face. This was the extraordinary ability possessed by the faceless of Sequence 6 of the Seer pathway. See, at this time, this mid-sequence level of extraordinary power is quite fitting, isn't it? Nearing out of control, undergoing the awakening of the blessed heavenly worthies will, and uncontrollably transforming towards a terrifying aspect was not Tang, but Zaratoth, the blessed of the High One, who stayed quietly in Euclidean space when he advanced to miracle inventor and didn't participate in the subsequent battles. Without extraordinary characteristics, one cannot bear the mutation brought about by the blessed heavenly worthies awakening. Tang snapped his fingers, and Euclidean space began to tremble. Brilliant light emanated from Zaratoth's body. That was the extraordinary power fixed by the observer. keeping the Blessed One in their peak state.
Zaratoth's Sequence 2 extraordinary characteristics were on Tang. He was now just an antiquarian of Sequence 3. Where would he get the extraordinary characteristics to bear the Blessed Heavenly Worthy's resurrection? You should know that at the Sequence 3 level, there is not much need to rely on anchors to resist madness and the tendency to lose control. And the initial resurrection, even at this current point in time, could never resurrect to such a powerful extent in someone of Sequence 3. This was an actively created bug. The slippery, sticky tentacles seemed to have suffered an incomprehensible collapse from the loss of their cornerstone, which caused those tentacles to gradually shrink and turn into one worm after another. The terrifying aura was rapidly weakening. Nicholas pondered for a moment and said to Tang, I think, from the very beginning, you used the bionic marionette module to create a personality that perfectly overlapped in fate, thoughts, consciousness, abilities, knowledge, and memories, and let it replace Zaratoth's original, bionic marionette module. And as a miracle inventor of Sequence 2, possessing a system, and having control over Euclidean space, everything is approximately equal to the real self, then this marionette is the real self. Being cowardly is hell when unprepared, but rushing indirectly when prepared, rushing with cowardice, and being cowardly with rushing, to avoid the corresponding risks to the greatest extent, this is indeed very much Tang's style.
The Beyonders of the three families of Go are really more insidious than the other.
As a time worm of Sequence 1, Nicholas Flamel couldn't help but pinch his forehead, feeling deeply moved by Tang's behavior of deceiving even him.
Putting aside everything else, only such a person can live long, isn't it? Host, dirty stuff. Ah, there's dirty stuff again.
In the system's cyber whale, Tang revealed a genuine smile. Correct, I just wanted to test Amon and Adam. Of course, it would be best to kill Amon. If I can't kill him, weakening him and letting him stay at Sequence 1 for a while longer won't be a loss. And obviously, fate is on our side. If it fails, the worst consequence would just be that this Zaratoth marionette is broken. As long as the extraordinary characteristics can be recovered, a new Zaratoth will appear before long. The bionic marionette module is a renewable resource, just like a boon. There will be another batch after one batch is cut off. As long as there are extraordinary characteristics, there is a bionic marionette module, there is Euclidean space in the future him. Then for Tang, the death of a Sequence 3 marionette, who only became Sequence 2 by relying on the power of the boon, is really not a big deal. Failure is nothing more than a temporary reduction in his own strength, while Amon has truly and genuinely suffered a great loss. After this, Tang, personality completely died, the will belonging to the Blessed Heavenly Worthy unwillingly fell into dead silence once again, waiting for a new opportunity. Zaratoth, who was suppressed by Euclidean space, had all the countless slippery tentacles on his body disappear. The initially crazed spirit worms calmed down in a short period of time because the main body was a marionette. The dead don't go mad, do they? As the Zaratoth bionic marionette module was loaded once again, the other party came back to life once more. The spirit worms followed the fate of the main body and crawled back into the body of this secret society leader, combining with the spirit of the other party who had regained vitality. Although the influence of the Blessed Heavenly Worthy's initial awakening was still there, and those whispers still faintly echoed in the ears of this antiquarian, it was obviously much better than the previous out-of-control state. All right, a great harvest. Tang clapped his hands and said to Nicholas, then we can also prepare a weakened version of the godhood ceremony to completely replace Amon's position. Miskatonic University, inside. As evening approached, the lights in this city, standing tall on the wasteland, began to shine, leading its residents to mistakenly believe they were still basking under the sun. Celia, Archer, Regulus, and Celia's roommate, Alice Jane Catherine from Ruinting City, after enjoying a hearty breakfast, explored Miskatonic University, guided by a map provided with their admission notice.
Really, this place really is surprisingly large.
Celia, as a hunter, felt physically tired after a day of walking, even with the extraordinary power that enhanced her physique. She rubbed her temples, stretched her legs to ease the soreness in her thighs, but the excitement of the day wasn't diminished by the physical fatigue. Together, they entered the school cafeteria, a building constructed with blue-gray bricks, exuding a sense of historical accumulation. They casually found a corner, placed their respective meals there. The appetizing aroma and vibrant colors of the food awakened the taste buds of the tired beyonders. They enjoyed the delicacies that were hard to find outside, while sharing their impressions of the campus and some peculiar associations. Instead of calling this a university, I'd say it's more like a city with a university at its heart. It's big enough. Alice, does Ruinting City have universities like this? I remember Khoi University and Ruinting University, their reputations have even reached my ears in Intis. Ruinting City in the Kingdom of Loen was the first city to initiate the university system. Over 300 years ago, since the city's magistrate established these two universities, many transformative and epic-making things have been emanating from Ruinting, like a heart, delivering them to Loen and the entire northern continent, changing them. Among these were medical reforms, land cultivation, various strange inventions, and corresponding knowledge summarizing these things, all concerning the lower and middle classes. These changes allowed Loen, and the entire northern continent, to improve the living conditions of the lower and middle classes in a short period, increasing food production and promoting the development of the textile and industrial industries. This also led the Fesic Empire, Intis, the Phenopot Kingdom, and other countries to make certain changes in a positive direction. The northern continent nations acknowledged the rationality of the university system, and new schools were built everywhere to absorb talent, providing more support for those with intelligent minds. This saved many people from having to engage in the lowest jobs due to family poverty and food shortages, living a life of mediocrity and toil. The research results of universities promoted the emergence of new industries, and new industries drove the demand for labor. All of this gave the lower and middle classes more valuable opportunities. Even so, the achievements, creations, summarized rules, and researched subjects of every university in the northern continent over the past 300 years have almost never been comparable to those of the two universities in Ruinting City. Ruinting, under the jurisdiction of Ahorva County, is a very special city even within the Kingdom of Loen. Alice, hearing Celia mention her city, raised her head to look at her roommate, her voice somewhat ethereal, with a hint of ethereal meaning, and said, "Yes. As far as I know, many professors at Khoi University and Ruinting University have other identities in the Ruinting city government, chambers of commerce, churches, and other places, or undertake corresponding, more important responsibilities. They are not just professors at Khoi or Ruinting University, but being a university professor is their most important identity.
And those upper-class people in Ruinting City, even if they are not on the staff of these two universities, have close ties with these two universities.
In Ruinting, whether in medicine, trade, policy, church, or education, most of Ruinting City is serving the existence of the two universities. The establishment of the port, trade exchanges, the latest medical programs in hospitals, including various security and welfare systems for citizens in Ruinting City, are inextricably linked to these two universities. It can be said that without these two universities, the various functions of the entire Ruinting City, including the city government that should be controlled by the Beckland Loen royal family and the churches of the two major churches in Ruinting City, would be directly paralyzed in a very short period.
Therefore, Ruinting City also has a name in Loen, University City.
A city developed around universities is its core, the church and the Beckland Loen royal family actually allowing such a city to exist and develop is simply an incomprehensible exception for many historians and economists.
Listening to Alice, this place is indeed a bit like Ruinting.
Celia picked up a piece of carrot cake, took a bite, and said vaguely, apart from the absence of churches and city government, and the lack of people engaged in other work here, I think the area and functional facilities are no different from a normal city. Celia comes from the metropolis of Trier in Intis, and many of her insights cannot be compared to those of the gang member Archer or Regulus, who was once a country boy from Fesic. Perhaps only Alice, who has ancestors who were high-sequence beyonders and lives in a university city, like Ruinting, can have a broader understanding. Here, there are hospitals that look very high-end, large areas of farmland, textile factories, cloth factories, docks, and a whole wasteland with various peculiar buildings, which has exceeded their imagination too much. Although I haven't really understood the specific situation of this university. Celia took another bite of the carrot cake, marveling at this brand new delicacy and the sense of happiness filling her mouth. She couldn't help but sigh, but this university may exceed everyone's imagination. I can't wait to study here.
That big gamble back then, perhaps, they really won?
The lively cafeteria had sparse people from the North and South continents. The entire Miskatonic University was unimaginably large. Dispersed throughout the university, even the not-so-crowded cafeteria seemed empty.
Archer's gaze casually scanned the building that also seemed to have a considerable sense of age. Suddenly, his gaze fell on the entrance of the cafeteria.
He seemed to see something impossible, his pupils suddenly dilated, and his body suddenly stiffened. Archer, what's wrong? Celia, sitting opposite Archer, followed his gaze and looked towards the entrance of the cafeteria. At the same time, the remaining two companions also curiously looked over, following the gaze of Archer and Celia. Their pupils all dilated for a moment. The atmosphere in the cafeteria suddenly became as silent as if it had fallen into an icy lake. A suffocating silence seemed to take over the entire place.
A number of people were walking through the main entrance of the cafeteria.
These people didn't seem like the students who had just arrived yesterday. They were filled with an icy aura that was impossible to ignore, as if they had a natural barrier between them and the innocent, romantic people around them who were enjoying the unique atmosphere of the university. These people wore the same uniforms, tailored and sturdy, but the somewhat tattered and old combat uniforms made them stand out from the crowd. At first glance, they looked like seasoned veterans who had undergone professional training, but this wasn't the reason why the surrounding people felt fear towards this group of misfits.
Because almost none of the people who came in had a normal human appearance.
The 5 people who entered the cafeteria wearing combat uniforms that were tattered from battle were chatting and laughing with each other, but some of them had sticky, tentacle-like things growing on their bodies, some had cracks in their foreheads with things that looked like eyes wriggling inside, and some had scales growing on their faces and deformed wings growing on their backs. At first glance, they didn't look like people, but like monsters from folklore that had entered reality. These 5, monster-like humans walked to the window. One of them seemed to want to take out a coin from his pocket, but Celia, as a hunter with excellent eyesight, saw his hand suddenly break off when he reached into his pocket. Dark red blood flowed from the broken wrist and dripped onto the clean floor. The monster with the severed hand didn't seem surprised by this. He mumbled to the scaled person next to him for a moment, and then the scaled monster took out a gold coin. The monster with the severed hand grinned and punched the scaled monster on the back with his severed hand, causing even more blood to splatter.
Scary, a gentle voice came from the side, unnoticed by everyone. Celia, Archer and the others were startled and immediately turned their eyes away from the monsters. Not far away, they saw a young man standing next to the dining table wearing a black top hat and a matching tailored robe, with a crystal monocle in his right eye socket. When Archer saw this person, he immediately realized that this seemed to be the extraordinary person he had seen walking against the crowd to the steam train last night. Seemingly noticing Archer's gaze, Nicola Flamel smiled at the young man who had taken the assassin potion last night, pinched his monocle, and asked again.
"Looks scary." "It is a little," Celia said bluntly in a low voice. Seeing the gentleman with the monocle looking at her, she quickly explained, "I don't mean to mock. I know that in the world of mysticism, people who take magic potions may show signs of losing control due to certain factors. Their state is very similar to that."
Her explanation proved that she was not a complete newbie to the world of mysticism, and she still understood some extraordinary knowledge. Nicola didn't do anything to the little girl because of this. He nodded and said calmly, "You're right, Miss Celia. They have been contaminated by something, so they are showing uncontrollable symptoms of losing control." Celia was stunned and a little surprised. Is it really because of losing control? But I don't think their mental state is that bad. In general, those who lose control show changes not only in their bodies, but also more in their minds. If they were kind and righteous before, then after losing control and suffering the backlash of extraordinary characteristics, they may become evil and crazy. But the way those people were chatting and laughing didn't seem like a sign of losing control.
Some external factors can also cause extraordinary people to fall uncontrollably into the abyss of madness and pollution, Nicola Flamel said. As investigators, they have always faced the vanguard of heresy and pollution, bringing more stability to us into this world before they lose all reason, constantly fighting against darkness and evil, against danger and madness. Investigators. Mr. Flamel. Someone interrupted the questions of several new extraordinary people who had come to the university. It was one of the monster-like humans, with many slippery tentacles growing on his body. Just seeing it and getting close to it made them feel nauseous, both physiologically and psychologically.
This was not a normal phenomenon, this was a contamination with divinity. The one showing uncontrollable changes was a demigod. Celia's roommate, Alice, somehow endured this nausea and raised her head. But the young man called Flamel took off his hat and blocked Alice's eyes. The hat blocked the illusory, eyelashless eye that had somehow appeared, preventing her from seeing the true form of the monster. Don't listen to what you shouldn't, don't look at what you shouldn't. Yalin should have written about this in her notes, right? When Alice heard this voice in her ear, she suddenly fell silent. She looked at the young man who had put away his hat in disbelief, but saw that he had walked away with the tentacled man, and could only faintly hear a sentence. Mr. Flamel, there's a new situation with the resurrected corpses on the Himalayan snow mountain. The never-ending theater, 3rd floor, Crimson District. Tang stood in this district full of countless strange tales, monsters, and pollution, and stretched out his hand, as if to pull something. The next moment, the entire Crimson District shook, and the core of the theater suddenly appeared in the sky. It looked at Tang from afar, and just as it was about to take action, making a final, futile counterattack and struggle, it was knocked unconscious by the system and dragged into the small black room. The core of the theater stretched out its hands, signaling its secret puppet to save it. It could still be saved. Don't give up on it, Nicola. The time worm in the same area pinched his monocle. Oh. Bishop Brutus of Wars silently looked away, silently preparing to advance to Weather Warlock. Tang didn't care about the core of the theater being dragged into the small black room by the system for confinement. He was pulling the entire Crimson District, overlapping it with Euclidean space. At this moment, the entire Crimson District began to gradually ascend in dimension, and the zero-level sealed item, the never-ending theater, was passively and uncontrollably receiving the gift of the Supreme Being, and merging with the entire Euclidean space. The Supreme Being has cast its gaze upon you, and has fixed your fate. Euclidean space began to merge with the Crimson District. All sorts of monsters, whether controlled or uncontrolled, were terrified as they were drawn into the high-dimensional world. Their bodies were enveloped in countless brilliant lights. Contamination and madness spread rapidly, constantly mixing into even more terrifying things, becoming new nourishment to once again forge the entire Crimson District. Since Tang advanced to an angel, the observation range of Euclidean space had expanded to the entire planet. Except for some special areas, or situations where there were obstacles, he could immediately conduct corresponding observations in other places as long as Tang was in this space. Moreover, with abilities similar to a traveler's journey, he could quickly cross the distance between the spirit world and the real world to reach his destination. In a mystical sense, Euclidean space could serve as a collective bearing the mapping of the entire world. Similar to the spirit world, the projections and images of reality in the spirit world mapped into this place also possessed a certain symbolic meaning and could be altered by the master of this space. Standing in Euclidean space, Tang simultaneously separated out spirit worms and worked with the system to survey the corresponding symbols and concepts, changing the corresponding symbolic elements within Euclidean space. At the same time, he began to write down the honored names he would use after advancing to Sequence 2. This should have been done in Sequence 3, but the mystical knowledge involved in the honored names of Sequence 3 and Sequence 2 were inconsistent. He was also able to advance to Sequence 2 quickly at the time, so he didn't deliberately think about it. Although I had considered the honored names after advancing to Sequence 2 before, after truly advancing to the Miracle Worker and understanding more about my own uniqueness and essence, this honored name still needs to be changed. Yes, this way the positioning will be more accurate. While thinking, he watched the pollutants being eroded by Euclidean space and turning into strange high-dimensional creatures.
The Crimson District was constantly being assimilated by Euclidean space, allowing this space and the real world to have a stable, interconnected anchor point. Tang took a charcoal pencil and wrote a string of 3-part ancient Hermes phrases on the parchment.
Observer of the future and destiny. The unknown manipulator.
Magician who brings miracles. The first part corresponded to the Euclidean space of the supreme position, the second part corresponded to the secret masters of the secret puppets scattered throughout the North and South continents, and the third part corresponded to his own position as a miracle worker. Actually, I could add a few more sentences, such as, outsider from another world, devotee of the knowledge wilderness, holder of the system, proxy of the future and the past, and so on. However, although these descriptions can directly define myself, these titles more or less have the risk of exposing my own secrets.
The second part used unknown manipulator to refer to the manufacturer of the groups of secret puppets in the streets and alleys. Although the symbolic meaning was not obvious, with the constraints of the first and third parts of the honored name, this part of the honored name could not point to other high-ranking individuals who could enter and exit Euclidean space other than him. With sufficient mystical knowledge as support, Tang quickly finalized the honored name pointing to himself, although this honored name was useless. Who would pray to him? Amen. Secret puppets didn't need it at all. With the secret master's spirit thread connection and the system's transmission, those were much faster. I'll tell Owen and Father about it someday, maybe it will be useful sometime? After finalizing the honored name, Tang looked at the part where Euclidean space and the Crimson District were mixed together. At this time, the entire Euclidean space had undergone tremendous changes. High mountains, vast oceans, huge, desolate cities, they no longer existed in the form of blocks in the Crimson District. After being highly integrated with Euclidean space, the Crimson District independently accepted the mapping from the entire world in Euclidean space, and a wonderful change occurred. Integrated with Euclidean space and ascending into this space, the third floor of the never-ending theater, the Crimson District, now became more like a miniature of the Earth, rather than a flat world of heaven and earth. This was a node connecting Euclidean space and the real world, which not only served as a connection but also played a protective role. As long as the correct method was used, even if they were not secret puppets or the envoys, his followers and others would not be directly eroded by the power of Euclidean space after entering the Crimson District, causing mutations. And this miniature planet, like a microcosm of the world, was pinched by Tang according to the Earth before the First Epoch in the system database. Why did the corpses buried in the snow on the Himalayas suddenly revive? When did strange oil monsters appear in the city bombarded by nuclear bombs? Why did the oil painting hanging in the ancient castle open its eyes? And why did the corpse nailed to the ground scream and cry? The beaches of Iceland have always been black since ancient times, and the ancient viruses in the Arctic permafrost make people live forever. The hanging gardens of Babylon float in the sky, and the ancient buildings lost in the deep sea resound with the songs of mermaids. The ancient tombs in the underground, the unreachable platforms, the human head balloons floating in the sky, the centipede with a human face that is hundreds of meters long, the mysterious tropical rainforest has countless man-eating monsters, the farm that raises corpses, the gate of hell is opened today, and the ladder to the red moon is being built. High mountains, vast oceans, stars twinkling on the tops of the mountains, and traces of wandering resentful souls and monsters everywhere in the uninhabited city. The darkness of the world, with the observation of Euclidean space, and through the revision of the system and Nicola, various problems in the real world produced corresponding symbolic elements in this space. By mapping the problems of the real world into Euclidean space, and then eliminating the corresponding root causes of the problems in Euclidean space, this kind of elimination of symbolic elements and the creation of mystical connections can also solve some problems in the real world. For example, somewhere in Backland, heretical cultists who believe in the true creator are performing evil sacrificial rituals. After this ritual is observed, corresponding symbolic elements will appear in Euclidean space. This may be a monster, or some kind of strange life, and as long as this symbolic element is killed in Euclidean space, then the heretical cultist in the real world will also die directly. This should be a part of the supreme authority. Being able to observe means being able to interfere, and being able to interfere means being able to manipulate. What Tang thought of was some of the arguments he saw in some anime in his previous life, and this argument was indeed unexpectedly close to the extraordinary abilities of the strange path of Supreme. However, a Sequence 2 observer should be able to do something similar. Euclidean space has only expanded the scope of such observers, directly encompassing the entire Earth. Tang thought for a moment, then looked up at the sky. Outside the barrier, does a world similar to Euclidean space also exist? Who is the master of that space? A high-dimensional overseer. Such similar authority, it's really hard not to suspect that this space was torn from the high-dimensional overseer. Then, after the barrier is broken, will the first thing the high-dimensional overseer does upon entering be to find him? Shaking his head, Tang looked at the Crimson Campus, which was already nearing completion, and then glanced at the system, which was starting to smoke due to exceeding its computational capacity, before withdrawing his gaze. He stepped out of the location of the Crimson Campus and entered the principal's office, then released the theater core. The theater core, which had previously been knocked unconscious and locked up by the system, no longer had the desire to make everyone die together, "if I'm not having a good time, no one else will" attitude. As a zero-level sealed artifact, the theater core was obviously the type that could communicate, and its intelligence was not low, at least above the human average. Staring at this theater core, which resembled a brilliant heart and had been completely assimilated by Euclidean space, Tang smiled and said, "What's wrong? Are you unhappy that you weren't eaten by someone as a main ingredient for a potion?" The theater core remained silent, simply retreating into its shell. Tang stroked his chin and took out the magician's professional prop, simply throwing this thing around as a ball to practice with when he had nothing else to do. "Theater core, you're really unlucky, ah." Pinching the theater core, which was already in a state of living dead, Tang looked towards the doorway. There was a knock at the door. "Come in." The door was opened from the outside, and several extraordinary individuals walked in, wearing ragged clothes and looking more like monsters than humans. The leading extraordinary individual was covered in strange, slippery tentacles, and just looking at him made one feel physically uncomfortable. Tang nodded to these people. Fifth Epoch, September 1, 513. Archer, who had been exhausted from touring the school the day before yesterday, had spent most of yesterday in his dorm room. Regulus, also a Sequence 9, didn't seem to have received any significant physical enhancements like Archer, who was an assassin. Archer was still a little overwhelmed when the date written on the admission notice arrived. The warrior's boost to physical fitness is indeed very high. Archer was a little envious, while Regulus scratched his head. "I think assassin is also very good, very light. My family always says I'm too clumsy. I've broken several doors." Broken several doors. That shouldn't be an effect of the warrior potion. Archer thought to himself with some sarcasm, but he quickly perked up. Soon, before the scheduled time, the bustling crowd who had arrived on the Spirit World Express from the various countries of the North and South continents left their resting places and entered a grand auditorium about 20 meters high, built of black bricks and off-white paint. The auditorium was noisy but not dim. The walls around were painted with various paintings of peculiar significance. Archer glanced at the murals in a hurry, then focused his attention on the others. In the world of the extraordinary, there seemed to be no easy way to distinguish ordinary people from extraordinary individuals based on appearance alone. Apart from those who looked like wizards or were very mystical, most of the others were simply dressed in normal North and South continent attire. Looking at the black mass, it was impossible to tell who was who. "Hello." At this moment, someone suddenly approached. As a member of the Black Gang, Archer was instinctively alert, but when he saw that it was a child who didn't look very old, at most 13 or 14 years old, the alertness in his heart immediately dissipated. "You are." This boy, who looked only 13 or 14 years old, had slightly curly hair and a slightly bronze complexion, which seemed to be a feature left behind after years of wind and sun exposure. Looking at his face shape, he didn't look like a North Continent person. Seeing Archer's response, the little boy with the bronze skin also brightened his eyes, and he quickly said, "I'm Federico Garfield Cash, from Upton Village. You really can understand what I'm saying." Archer and Regulus were confused by what he said. You can also understand what I'm saying, mean. Aren't you speaking Loenese, Loenese? Regulus looked at his roommate with a question mark on his face and said strangely, aren't you speaking Fasak?
Archer. What are you guys chatting about? Celia, an excellent hunter, and Alice, a seer, had also found their tracks and walked over. Seeing Archer and Regulus chatting with a strange boy, Celia asked curiously.
Celia, have you been speaking Intesian all along? Archer asked. Celia was stunned for a moment, and asked back, haven't you been saying? Suddenly, she paused and muttered to herself, one is a Loenese, one is a Fasak, that's not right. How did you manage to speak Intesian all the time, and so fluently? Because they had been in Intis for a long time, and everyone around them spoke fluent Intesian. Every train attendant and passenger they saw after boarding the train spoke fluent Intesian, which had numbed the hunter, who should have been extremely sensitive to such issues for a long time.
A ritual. Alice, who seemed to have no presence, suddenly said. It should be a large ritual magic that covers most languages and can translate according to individual languages. A large ritual covering the entire steam train, covering the entire school. Before Archer and the others could react to what a large ritual magic was, a figure appeared on the stone platform protruding from the front of the auditorium. It was a young man wearing a black top hat, a matching tailcoat suit with a white shirt, and a crystal-carved monocle on his right eye. As soon as this young man appeared, the surrounding sounds went silent, as if everyone had suddenly lost the desire to talk to others. Ladies and gentlemen, the voice of the young man wearing the monocle fell into everyone's ears. Welcome, everyone, to Miskatonic University. Fifth Epoch, September 2nd, year 513, Monday. Inside the spacious and bright lecture hall, many people, either holding quills or awkwardly wielding fountain pens, were constantly writing back and forth on sheets of paper, scribbling furiously. Seated at the front of the lecture hall was a half-giant figure who appeared to be over 7 feet tall. Behind him, on a similarly large blackboard, was a string of words written in ancient Hermes. Miskatonic University, Ancient Hermes Language, Professional Level Certification Exam. Over 1,000 people from all over the North and South continents, some beyonders and some not, were distributed among the lecture halls, all doing the same thing, except for the proctors and the content written on the blackboard which differed. Ancient Hermes, giant language, dragon language, elf language, and other languages capable of leveraging the power of nature, were essential knowledge for those entering the world of the extraordinary. For a Beyander, mastering one or even several of these languages at the low to mid sequences, even just entering the mystical circle, should be the most basic operation. Among these 1,000+ people from all over the North and South continents, the vast majority were just ordinary people. For these ordinary people who had not yet entered the extraordinary realm, they were naturally given exams in the official languages of their respective regions. Those from Loen took the Loen language exam, those from Intis took the Intis language exam, and those from Fulsak took the Fulsak language exam. As for those who didn't know how to write the language at all and could only read and listen, they were sent directly to the Seer Pathways marionettes to undergo a period of insane knowledge baptism until they could barely understand and write the corresponding native language. After all, illiteracy could be terrifying sometimes. If one couldn't even understand the most basic native language, let alone delve deeper into the knowledge of the mystical world. As for the remaining Beyonders, the vast majority of whom were wild Beyonders without formal mystical education, their mastery of languages that could leverage the power of nature naturally varied. Conducting such an exam to provide professional literacy training was obviously a very important factor. Language is the foundation of the foundation. It has to be said that literacy campaigns are also very important. Although being able to communicate without barriers in the field of ritual magic is itself a miracle, since they are all going to become Beyonders, if they keep relying on the mystical bonuses brought by large-scale rituals. While spinning the globe on his office desk, Tang looked at the constantly changing terrain on the globe and talked to Nicola, who was standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, seemingly looking out over the entire university. Hearing his master's muttering, Nicola pinched his monocle, turned his head. I can directly send the corresponding knowledge into their brains. The secret suppliant pathway, the scholar pathway, and the seer pathway have marionettes with extraordinary abilities in the corresponding fields, so they should also be able to do it. Then forget it. Tang propped his face with one hand, spinning the globe, and muttered softly, "How can it be so easy? When I learned those extraordinary languages, I was half dead. If you have the ability, you should naturally give back to society, shouldn't you? If you get caught in the rain, should you hold an umbrella for others? There's no such good thing. Learn. All of you, learn. Learn until you're half dead."
Nicola was speechless for a moment. Sometimes, he felt a little helpless about his master's idea of wanting to tear up other people's umbrellas after being caught in the rain. Of course, this kind of trivial matter was not an issue that this Sequence 1 angel needed to pay attention to. "Okay, when are you planning to go to the Hornassus Mountains?"
The Miracle Invoker's potion was similar to the Ancient Scholar's potion. After Tang solved Amon, a Sequence 1 who had survived from ancient times, challenged the impossible, and demonstrated miracles, this part of the potion had naturally been digested. Next was the issue of advancing to Sequence 1.
Well, the issue of advancing to Sequence 1. I plan to consider it together with Bug's simplified version of the advancement ritual.
While saying this, Tang put down the globe in his hand, stood up. "When advancing to Sequence 1, I plan to try to accommodate the uniqueness of the seer pathway. When that time comes, you will replace my destiny, accommodate Amon's monocle, and directly become the Error Pathway's 2+1 King of Angels."
Speaking of this, Tang sighed. Advancing to Sequence 0 is still not very safe in this era, and recently no King of Angels has had the opportunity to become a god, unless we go and fight the Chaos Sea and the Dark Angel Evil Spirit again. Try to get the first Blasphemy Slate, replicate Amon's path to godhood, and sacrifice Mr. Door.
Although the thief's 3 Sequence 1 characteristics and uniqueness are all here with him. Oh, no, there's still one with Grandpa. At least you can't say that, at least you shouldn't. Becoming Error, okay, let's accommodate the uniqueness of Error first. Although I don't know what role Adam played in Amon's characteristics being exposed, in short, strengthening our power will never be a problem. After finishing this issue, Tang added in a skip rope-like manner, "Oh, right, those people who need to make up for language problems, send them all to Tingen University after the exam is over." The 2 universities in Tingen were established by Owen Lamdre when he was the magistrate of Tingen. The entire Tingen city has 2/10 living people, 1/10 dead people, urban legends and monsters, and the remaining 7/10 are marionettes. Khoi University and Tingen University can be said to be the most human places in Tingen at present. After all, those who come from other places, without committing any principled errors, will not be directly hanged up as marionettes. As for sending people to Tingen, this will give these people strange associations. Tang is not afraid of being exposed. After detaining the official Beyonders of the Eternal Blazing Sun, Artisan, and Storm churches, he didn't think about hiding it. You can hide it for a while, but you can't hide it forever. With the Night Church endorsing me, as long as it doesn't involve real faith issues, and I myself am not a Beyonder who believes in evil gods, then the major orthodox churches and angel families will not unite and directly attack Tingen.
Especially with Nicola Flamel, this Sequence 1-time worm, in Tingen.
Just like before, even when he went to Trier in Intis, when facing the angels of the Surin royal family, the Eternal Blazing Sun, and the Artisan Church, without being in adjacent pathways or having too many hidden dangers, those angels were not willing to offend him.
Sequence 1s are the top combat power on this planet while the gods are still blocking the cracks in the barrier in the starry sky.
As for Tang himself, the actual manipulator of Tingen City, he estimates that only the Pope of the Night Goddess Church knows that there is someone behind Nicola Flamel. Besides, even if he is exposed, what kind of bad person is he? He doesn't believe in evil gods. It's just that the future self seems to be an evil god, a minor issue, all minor issues. What problems could future me and present me have? As for the issues of faith and anchors, those are even easier to solve. Secret puppets are my anchors. They're all either believers in evil gods or completely rotten people. I believe those old seniors wouldn't mind their faith. Moreover, with the Miracle Mage's position, having complete usage and dominance over Euclidean space, the power involving the past,
present, and future allows Tang himself to generate an anchoring effect through self-belief.
The past me believes in myself, the present me believes in myself, and the future me also believes in myself. Every moment, every minute, every second, through observation and interference with the past, present, and future, can form effective anchors, assisting those secret puppet anchors in the real world and the seedling-like things initially reviving on his spirit body, making it not difficult to suppress the consciousness of the heavenly Lord of primordial beginning within him. If I were to advance to a seer of secrets based on my situation, accommodating the uniqueness, even if the initial consciousness belonging to the heavenly Lord exceeds the strength of a normal sequence 1 and the uniqueness, I would be able to handle it. Unless he gathers all the uniquenesses and sequence 1 Beyander characteristics of the 3 families of the Lord of the Mysteries in a short period, otherwise, with so many anchors and his own sufficiently special situation, making him completely insane is as likely as Amon running up to him right now and spinning around in place doing a ballet, the probability is almost zero.
Nikolai used his knuckles to adjust the bottom edge of his monocle, having no objections to Tang's thoughts. You've already digested the Sequence 2 potion. Before you go to the Hornassus Mountains, I think the Goddess of the Night will have the church people come to find you soon. Do you need me to handle it? After all, she has a tendency to want you to become the Lord of the Mysteries.
Previously, that future him, in the battle to kill Amon and reclaim the uniqueness and a portion of the Sequence 1 Beyander characteristic, the future him reached a deal with the Goddess of the Night.
Using the development of Miskatonic University and the support of the Church of the Night,
as well as the goddess's own attitude in the alliance of orthodox gods, the direct help of this deity in certain situations and some other details as chips, he exchanged it for Tang to solve the problem of the former death, his grandfather who felt both dead and somewhat alive, indirectly helping this deity who controls secrecy, to grasp this source of the eternal 3 pathways and the uniqueness of the death pathway. As a chip placed on the table, in reality, it's just some minor matters that aren't difficult for the goddess, so the reward for the equivalent exchange isn't Tang helping the goddess grasp a tributary of the eternal dark river or giving up the uniqueness of the death pathway, but just helping to locate Death Salinger's mausoleum located in the Rage Sea, resolving the influence he exerted there.
As for the uniqueness of the death pathway, that's yet another price.
Although the issue of the birth of the Lord of the Mysteries isn't actually involved here, Tang thinks that the Goddess of the Night already knows his identity.
Of course, it should still be a fake identity, a false descendant of the old days, a true transmigrator.
Just like she said, even the false me has the imprint left over from that era, but I think the goddess's expectations will be dashed. After advancing to Sequence 2, he already foresaw that with the Supreme One pathway belonging to himself, although this is a pathway with similar authority to the seer and apprentice, the pillar is already the highest level at which his own state can stabilize. If I become the Lord of the Mysteries, the final outcome will only be one. The malice of frantically devouring other sources rapidly expands, eventually becoming like the heavenly Lord and God who control multiple sources, either falling or reclaiming all other authorities, with the primordial one completely reviving.
The Lord of the Mysteries, this pillar plus any extraordinary power with a similar source, madness or fall, there are only these 2 endings.
This is the underlying rule of the mystical world, a rule that even a transmigrator cannot break.
So, the highest can only be Sequence 1, the Lord of the Mysteries cannot be me.
Tang breathed a sigh of relief and slumped back into the high-backed chair, his body twisted and softened into a posture that no human could make. Transparent worms with sparkling light spots emerged from his open palm, growing into slippery tentacles one after another.
Of course, Nikolai, if you want to become the Lord of the Mysteries, I have no objections.
Nikolai shook his head. The highest performance of the bionic puppet module can only support up to Sequence 0. If I become the Lord of the Mysteries, then the greatest possibility is that the Heavenly Lord's consciousness will completely replace me.
Tang spread his hands. So, there's no way, let the goddess find someone else, but regarding this point, I think I can talk to her. After all, where is there a place like Tingnan to nurture the Lord of the Mysteries?
Everywhere are high-level extraordinary powers of the 3 families of the Lord of the Mysteries pathway, everywhere are secret puppets, and there's also Nikolai, a king of angels. The extraordinary characteristics alone should be enough to directly gather Klein, who came down from the Source Castle and brought a sequence one seer of secrets extraordinary characteristic with him.
And after Klein comes down and understands the truth, his expression should be very interesting, right? How can this not be considered a seer serving the Lord of the Mysteries?
Tang couldn't help but laugh. Nikolai adjusted the bottom edge of his monocle again, looking at the often abnormal mental state of his secret puppet master, and sighed with sympathy for the future Lord of the Mysteries.
Alright, let's talk about serious matters. Tang, who had climbed up from the high-backed chair, readjusted his expression and looked at the globe on the table. Doyle, Basil, and Evans. They should have arrived at their destination by now, right?
Yes. The three people Tang mentioned were the secret puppets who had previously appeared in the cafeteria, exhibiting abnormal states. At the same time, they were also the opening act that Nikolai and Tang had finalized for Miskatonic University to officially take the stage. Powerful demigods, investigators backed by a certain secret organization. Let's just consider this a trivial greeting gift to the Church of Storms and the Church of Craftsmen, to the other Orthodox churches. At this moment, in a city-state of the Intis County in the Loen Kingdom, three figures wearing close-fitting combat uniforms that were somewhat out of sync with the current era, and hardly showing any abnormalities, appeared outside a city. The data shows that Freddie Robert, a well-known collector in Intis County, bought some antiques from the antique dealer Hobbs Berry a month ago, that is, at the beginning of August, including a suit of armor said to be cursed for £700.
Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Bloodthirsty armor, cursed armor, mad armor, this should be that thing capable of cursing a city to death, the one that needs to be sealed away. In a city under the jurisdiction of the Intersea County, Tang's figure gradually materialized into the real world. As an angel who had already advanced to a miracle inventor and possessed the Sequence 2 level, he nonchalantly walked into the mansion of Freddie Robert, a famous collector in Intersea County. His arrival did not attract the attention of any male servants or maids. He was even able to leisurely admire the portraits hanging on the walls, along with exquisite sculptures and many artifacts from ancient times, while heading towards a room emanating black mist, which would be difficult for ordinary people to notice. He passed through the door that sealed the room, stepped inside, and saw many carefully preserved items. This collector is indeed a collector in every sense of the word. As an ordinary person without any extraordinary power, he dares to bring anything and everything home. Tisk, tisk, many of these ancient artifacts pose a certain danger. If it weren't for the clergy of the Storm Church using some extraordinary power during Mass every month for these wealthy merchants who can offer enough pounds, giving them some mystical protection, just the things placed here would be enough to kill anyone who stays in this room for a long time in a terrifyingly short period of time. As a collector, prolonged contact with these items is an inevitable consequence, which also leads to this collector's really bad luck, always finding all sorts of strange and bizarre things. Focusing his gaze on a set of ancient silver full-body armor placed in the corner, which seemed neither dangerous nor particularly noticeable, Tang stroked his chin, stepped forward, and carefully examined this item passed down from ancient times. Unwashable dark red bloodstains, blood left behind by a certain ancient god. A bright light flashed in his eyes, then immediately dimmed, as if it were an illusion. Taking a few steps back, Tang stood still again and muttered to himself. Indeed, it is related to the giant King Ormir. By using the blood left on this item to indirectly influence the Giant King's court, the evil spirit of the Dark Angel Saslier is thrown out of the Giant King's court, leaving only the desecration slate. No, it doesn't seem enough. The Giant King's court is the earthly kingdom of the Giant King Ormir. Even though this ancient god has died, the kingdom he left behind still possesses certain unique qualities. By borrowing the mad armor, which has a certain mystical connection to the Giant King Ormir, and actively creating a bug to activate the special nature of the Giant King's court. Although the success rate of directly throwing out the Dark Angel is not very high, it is still a method. This should be it, the sealed artifact codenamed 1-42 by the Night Church, the Mad Armor. Through the revelations of fate and the ability of divination, Tang quickly determined that this mad armor would experience a more terrifying riot within the next month. The seemingly out-of-control mad armor would not only be limited to its wielder. Widespread and large-scale death would be the fate of this city next. Host, should we notify the people of the Night Church now?
Let them discover it themselves. Tang thought for a moment and shook his head. This item won't have such a big impact now, and the reason for this outcome is not just this item that needs to be sealed away.
Otherwise, why was it just the collector who died before, but this time it's going to be the death of an entire city? The inherent logic has changed, and there is always a reason for it. Although it was not mentioned in the original work, according to Tang's own mystical knowledge and the results of divination, someone or something must have stimulated this sealed artifact, leading to such a tragedy.
Directly and forcibly interfering with these events in the original work is not a big problem. A 1-level sealed artifact is something the Night Church can afford to lose. Anyway, they haven't obtained it yet, and stumbling upon it naturally counts as his.
As for the troublesome matters involved, let the secret puppets handle it. They are already mature secret puppets and should know how to properly carry out tasks without the manipulation of the secret puppet master. Tang's figure gradually disappeared. He was merely a projection from Euclidean space into the real world. Host, your idea is a bit rebellious. The system also left with its host. It has been working hard to integrate the entire Crimson Academy recently and is applying to the main system for further upgrades, so it doesn't have much time to deal with this issue.
As for Doyle, Basil, and Evans, a Sequence 4 Trick Magician from the Divinator pathway, a Sequence 5 Light Priest from the Sun pathway, and a Sequence 5 Chaos Instructor from the Lawyer pathway, such a configuration can be said to be able to cope with most mystical dangers that may arise, especially with the presence of a demigod-level powerhouse. It is not difficult to investigate the problems in this city.
Taking back this sealed artifact is the same. Demigods are extremely terrifying existences, no matter where they are. Therefore, when several investigators arrived at the mansion of Freddie Robert, a famous collector in Intersea County, Doyle, based on the revelations of the Divinator, directly stopped Freddie Robert, who was about to go out. Then, they convinced the great collector, spent £5,000, and directly bought the armor. After that, they put the armor into the temporary safe house they had rented, waiting for the problem to erupt.
Ah, what a simple and unadorned solution. I always feel like something is not right. A clone of Tang, formed by the combination of spirit worms, was observing this side and couldn't help but mutter softly. But at least the first step has been completed. The main faith in Intersea County is the Lord of Storms. Here, the faith in the Night Goddess Church and the Artisan God Church is generally not as widespread as the Lord of Storms. Among the 7 Orthodox churches, there is only one true God who holds the authority of storms and waves, so the faith in the Lord of Storms is the mainstream belief for most coastal areas and maritime groups. Therefore, most pirates and people who often need to go out to sea naturally believe in this god. Even if it is not in ruin, in places near the sea such as Intis and Fusak, there is also a similar worship of storms and the ocean. Of course, in order to gather the faith of believers, countries like Intis and Fulsak mostly set up a corresponding angel with similar authority within their own churches, as an object for believers in need to pray to, so as not to add an anchor point to the opposing god. The city under the jurisdiction of the Intis County is also like this. The chapels of the Storm Church and the Evernight Church are located on the north and south sides of the city. The chapel of the Storm Church is close to the main road, while the chapel of the Evernight Church is close to the municipal government area. The former has a more exquisite and magnificent building, while the latter is much smaller. The main reason for this difference is naturally the number of believers. As for the Artisan Church, there seems to be a small chapel near the pier, but basically no one cares about it. As for the Church of the Lord of Storms, under the reform of the Evernight Church, the agent of the Lord of Storms in the human world, one of the 3 Orthodox churches in the Kingdom of Loen, has also undergone considerable changes within the church. Archbishop Channies of the Evernight Church did not hide much in similar details. Establishing a sound system and ensuring that extraordinary events do not endanger ordinary people as much as possible are major reforms in the corresponding history for all major churches. As the Punisher team of the Storm Church dealing with corresponding issues, Giles Nick, a Sequence 6 Storm Blessed, has received the corresponding information and is preparing to visit the collector Freddie Robert.
A painting that has passed through several hands, all of which have caused things that can only be created by similar extraordinary powers. This is obviously something with a high degree of danger and needs to be specially dealt with. With such an item entering Valda City unknowingly, it is clear that a mishandling of it could lead to consequences they cannot bear. When the captain of the Punisher team led his team members to the collector Freddie Robert, who was enjoying a romantic drama, they heard an answer from him that they could not understand at all. "The armor you mentioned? It was just bought by someone." The collector Freddie Robert was a middle-aged man in his 30s or 40s, slightly overweight, with a receding hairline. He smiled and said to the Punishers, "If you had come a little faster, you might have run into those people." Really? Someone would actually spend £5,000 to buy such an item. "Do you know who bought it?" The collector Freddie Robert thought for a while and said, "3 men, wearing strange clothes, directly blocked my door." "Oh, right. They claimed to be investigators from some Miskatonic University." Miskatonic University? When the captain of the Punisher team heard the name mentioned by the collector Freddie Robert, he suddenly recalled the message sent by the Storm Church headquarters not long ago, to pay close attention to something called Miskatonic University, recently. The 3 who bought the obviously problematic armor are extraordinary people from Miskatonic University. What do they want to do? The next investigation target was very clear. Leaving a team member next to the collector Freddie Robert, using ritual magic to try to restore the true appearance of the 3 people who bought the armor, the rest went directly to track down the whereabouts of the armor, and must find them before those obviously problematic people do anything. The tracking requires certain clues, and those people have obviously done very strong anti-divination and anti-prophecy measures, and it is impossible to easily obtain corresponding revelations directly from the spirit world through prophetic divination. Mobilizing the informants belonging to the Punishers in this city to find people, all the extraordinary people of the Storm Church were busy. Originally, it was thought that these things would take some time to investigate, but unexpectedly, those extraordinary people who were said to be from Miskatonic University actually came to their door themselves. Less than 24 hours after the crazy armor was bought, the St. Borg Church, which belongs to the Storm Church, waited for the buyers. It was a middle-aged man wearing clothes with the style of the Intis County, with a weathered, dark skin, in his 30s or 40s, with an overly honest appearance, who did not look like an outsider but rather like a local from the Intis County. After being relayed by the clergy of the church and meeting the captain of the Punisher team, the dark-skinned middle-aged man smiled and said, "I killed my wife and buried her in." The captain of the Punisher team was about to say something, but was directly blocked back by the words of the person in front of him. Captain of the Punisher team. After chattering for a long time, the dark-skinned man finished saying all the crimes he had committed, enough to be hanged a dozen times. The captain of the Punisher team endured the urge to ask God for a lightning strike to kill this person who should not be alive in this world, and listened quietly from beginning to end. Until the end, the dark-skinned middle-aged man smiled, looking particularly simple and friendly. If judged by appearance alone, it would be really hard to imagine that such a person had killed no less than 5 relatives and friends in his decades of life, and had never been suspected in the slightest because of his usual honest and simple performance. "Okay, the above is the sin I want to state, and the rest, Mr. Giles Nick." He directly called out the real name of the Punisher in front of him and said, "Regarding the armor that the Storm Church is tracking, we have recovered it and have done certain seals and cleansing." Hearing the person in front of him suddenly change his way of speaking and showing abnormality, Giles Nick also did not directly attack. He knew that the person in front of him could never be the extraordinary people from Miskatonic University themselves. Obviously, some of those extraordinary people possessed extraordinary powers to suggest, hypnotize others, or turn people into puppets. "Tricky, quite tricky." Giles Nick asked calmly, "Who are you? What are you doing taking that armor?" "Who are we? A good question." The middle-aged man smiled. "Don't you think that it is actually very difficult to take care of all aspects of the problem with the power of the church alone? Just like this person, he has killed 5 lives in his decades of life,
but until now, before saying what I just said, which person in the church or the government has understood these things?
Please rest assured, we are not enemies, and we have no need to be enemies with the Storm Church.
We are not here to interfere with you, we are here to join you.
The middle-aged man in front of him, who looked like a normal person, seemed to convey this meaning in every word he spoke. Join us? Help us deal with those extraordinary events? Giles Nick's mind raced, but he couldn't find any flaws or loopholes in the other party's words.
Buying the armor in advance and doing the corresponding seal was indeed a good solution, but he couldn't believe every word the other party said, nor could he entrust his safety to such an extraordinary person who hadn't even revealed his true form and obviously belonged to some secret organization. Miskatonic University, what kind of place is that? After you seal the armor, where do you plan to take it? What are you going to do with it? The Punisher team leader asked.
The middle-aged man smiled and said, regarding the matters of that university, wouldn't you know once you set foot there and see for yourselves? His tone was very firm, as if he was extremely certain that someone from the Storm Church would go to confirm the true situation of that university. As for that armor, after it's dealt with, it will naturally be taken back for further sealing and disposal. Please rest assured, we can handle the problems with that crazy armor. Handle? How to handle it? Restore it to extraordinary characteristics, or put it somewhere else to cause destruction? Who knows what you guys really want to do? Giles Nick held the greatest malice towards these wild extraordinary individuals.
Of course, part of the reason was that he really didn't expect these wild extraordinary individuals to dare to come directly to his door, and even contact the official extraordinary organization directly, revealing their information. Who comes to the door in person? If they reported through anonymous letters, they would accept it, but coming over so openly really gave off a sense of inexplicable provocation.
Alright, we should also be setting off. The middle-aged man stood up after explaining everything. Wait a minute, but before Giles Nick could say this, his pupils suddenly dilated. The middle-aged man opposite him fell directly to the ground with a thud, stiffly collapsing there, already without breath.
Giles Nick quickly stepped forward to check, only to see that the middle-aged man's expression was painful. He seemed to have encountered extremely terrifying things before his death, presenting a state completely unlike his previous composure. Subsequently, high-ranking members of the Storm Church came to investigate this incident involving a strange university like Miskatonic University, and also confirmed the state of the person who died in front of the Punishers before his death. Before his death, that is, before being marionetted, this middle-aged man had already suffered a mental torment. Through divination, it was learned that the various crimes he committed were true, and the Punishers also obtained corresponding factual evidence. The person who came was an extraordinary individual of the seer pathway, with a small probability of being a Sequence 5 marionettist, and a high probability of already pushing open the door of divinity, becoming a Sequence 4 trickster of the seer pathway. That is, a saint. Similar things to the crazy armor in Janai County were also happening all over the Loen Kingdom. Most of the extraordinary individuals of the churches did not notice, or in situations where the higher-level forces of the churches did not provide timely support, there were always people claiming to be investigators, appearing in similar places, leaving some information, pointing to that strange university. And the name of this university, if one carefully examined the relevant information within the church, it would be easy to associate it with similar rumors that had spread for some reason hundreds of years ago. The source of the rumors was also easy to pinpoint. The mastermind behind the scenes seemed to have no intention of hiding anything, and did not do any interference in the sense of mysticism.
Tingnan City, Fifth Epoch, 513, October. A bright and sunny morning, Tingnan University, the principal's office.
Facing several extraordinary individuals from the Storm Church and the Artisan Church, a middle-aged gentleman of about 40 years old, with already graying hair, stood in front of the French window, his azure blue eyes filled with calmness and indifference, without excessive respect for the two major churches. He was not only the principal of Tingnan University, but also the chairman of the Tingnan Wharf Labor Union, the deputy mayor of the Tingnan city government, a wealthy businessman, and also a nobleman with a title, one of the real power figures in Tingnan City. Even the two major churches could not do anything to him without confirming whether there were any abnormalities. I already know the requests of the two major churches. Regarding the information about Miskatonic University, yes, it first appeared in Tingen City.
The gentleman named Jar Herrera said calmly and gently, as for more, I don't know.
Don't know. The Cardinal Bishop of the Storm Church looked tall and burly, his linen clothes bulging with muscles, looking like he could knock down such a well-mannered middle-aged man without any traces of exercise with one punch. He wanted to step forward and speak to this person who seemed overly understated, but this person obviously had enough confidence, and he should know many things. You should be clear, Mr. Herrera, this is from the two orthodox churches, the Storm Church and the Artisan Church. He deliberately emphasized the word, orthodox, trying to remind the other party that this was within the Loen kingdom, and that he was facing church forces that could preach, possessed extraordinary power, and belonged to the top in the mystical world. You are facing the inquiries of the two major orthodox churches, which concerns many things. I think, Mr. Herrera, you wouldn't want to know what the price of bearing the wrath of the two major churches really is. The Storm Church sent a cardinal bishop to Tingen City this time, a sequence 4 calamity high priest within the church, a true demigod. He also knew that some church clergy had mysteriously disappeared in the middle of the night, suspected of going to that place called Miskatonic University, one of several cardinal bishops. This time, he came to Tingen, also trying to find out the secrets hidden behind this city.
Why does the Night Church support the development of Tingen so much? Because of Nicholas Flamel.
As soon as he thought of that existence who seemed to be an angel of the thief pathway, the words of the cardinal bishop of the Storm Church, who was still threatening the person in front of him, suddenly stopped. He watched the other party slightly raise the corners of his mouth, showing him a gentle smile, and took out a monocle carved from crystal from the void, placing it in the socket of his right eye. You seem to be threatening me. The principal of Tingen University blinked his azure blue eyes and asked back with a smile. The extraordinary individual from the Artisan Church behind him tugged at the sleeve of the Storm Church demigod, who was famous for his impulsiveness. Big brother, calm down, there is a real angel here. Augustus and the Night Church basically don't care about this place. Are you going to recklessly go up there to wear a monocle, or are you going to wear a monocle? Seeing himself reflected in the monocle, the cardinal bishop of the Storm Church finally regained a sliver of reason. I apologize, Your Excellency Flamel, I was not aware that Tingen University was also under your domain. He quickly adjusted himself, made a fist with his right hand and struck his left chest, saying solemnly and sincerely. Unaware. For nearly 300 years, the entire Tingen has been under the protection of Nicola Flamel, this sequence 1 angel. Would the people of the Storm Church be unaware? As one of the important symbols of Tingen City, the principles of the two universities are clearly the protected, even parasitic, objects of Nicola Flamel, this sequence 1 angel. Would the Storm Church be unaware?
Was it unintentional, intentional, or intentionally unintentional?
The people of the Storm Church are so good at beating around the bush. Was it the idea of their pope?
Well, I don't mind. The middle-aged man pinched his monocle, smiled, and didn't continue on this topic, not directly throwing the obviously ill-intentioned fellow out of Tingen.
He then asked, is your church investigating the mysteriously missing clergy members from before? Still saying he doesn't know. The cardinal bishop of the Storm Church was gnashing his teeth inwardly, but since he couldn't vent his anger, he could only swallow his broken teeth. Yes. What about you? Is it also a problem with the clergy of the Artisan Church? The principal of Tingen University looked at the clergy member of the Artisan Church who had walked in with the Storm follower but had remained inconspicuous the whole time. This time, the Artisan Church only sent a sequence 5 astrologer. As a church whose proselytizing in ruin has never been as widespread as the Storm and Night churches, nor has it had as many believers, their actual status, the number of saints, and the mastery of sealed artifacts are far less high and numerous in ruin than in Intis. Moreover, there has never been a church established by the Artisan Church in Tingen City. Even in those more open universities, among those students, the proportion of faith in the Artisan Church is not high. The one sent to contact Nicola Flamel, this sequence 1 angel, was the extraordinary who had been staying in the recent Artisan Church in Tingen, and was usually the main contact person between the Artisan Church and Tingen.
He knew the terror of the angel in front of him, so naturally he dared not have much thought of concealing anything.
Well, if it's a problem with the church clergy, I think you've come to the wrong place. The principal of Tingen University smiled and said, go next door, take a look at Khoi University, you should find something. Then, before the two churches, extraordinary could react, the highly ranked principal took off his monocle, losing the goosebump-inducing feeling from just now. Do you still have anything else? The middle-aged man who didn't seem strict asked the two church clergy members, his tone still calm and peaceful, as if he had just withdrawn his gaze.
But the cardinal bishop of the Storm Church had already lost the courage to press further, and the extraordinary of the artisan church just wanted to leave quickly. Seeing the two church extraordinary walk out of the office, the principal of Tingen University paced to the floor-to-ceiling window in the principal's office, looking at the seemingly ordinary university in the sunlight in front of him. There were many new faces who had joined a month ago, with expressions of dismay on their faces. The principal of Tingen University slowly shook his head, sighing silently. A month of accelerated ancient Hermes language learning. Well, it is indeed very challenging. He had no thoughts about the two church extraordinary who had arrived. He was just a marionette. What thoughts could a marionette have? On the streets of Tingen City, two church extraordinary walking among the busy crowd were wearing ordinary clothes, trying to show the same style of dress as those around them as much as possible. But even so, gazes seemed to be cast from all corners, and everyone around them seemed to be sizing up these two outsiders who clearly didn't belong to this city, making their scalps tingle, as if they had come to a place with no living beings, where everyone was a clone or a marionette of someone. But when they looked over, those dark, cramped, and scrutinizing gazes disappeared inexplicably, and the surroundings returned to their original appearance, as if everything was just their own speculation. It was so creepy, especially for the astrologer with high spirituality. The increasingly strong sense of danger around him couldn't help but make him more cautious. The temporary companion beside him, the cardinal bishop of the Storm Church, seemed somewhat silent at this time. Nicola Flamel is a sequence one-time worm. It is not an unexpected discovery that there are many of his clones in this city. And the biggest problem here is, what kind of agreement has the Night Church reached with this angel? This time, those who disappeared because of the Miskatonic University incident included the Storm, the Artisan, the Eternal Blazing Sun, and the Earth Mother Church, as well as many official and unofficial people, but there was no news of any problems with the Night Church, which in itself was a signal. Although the extraordinary of the Storm Pathway appeared to be easily angered and simple-minded, the extraordinary of the Storm Pathway who can reach high positions and become cardinal bishops are by no means as impulsive, easily angered, and simple-minded as they appear on the surface. Among them, there is no lack of people who are good at reasoning. If they ignored this point just because of the Storm Pathway, then many people targeting them would obviously suffer a big loss. The cardinal bishop of the Storm Church sent to Tingen this time was obviously such a person. He was irritable and easily angered, with the obvious characteristics of the Storm Pathway, which could also allow those dealing with him to lower their guard and expose some special anomalies. Similarly, the Church's high-level attitude towards such a city has a kind of unclear and ambiguous feeling. Test Nicola Flamel's current state to see if he has made further improvements, sequence 1 and above, or is only one step away from godhood. A god. The cardinal bishop of the Storm Church's heart sank slightly. He had such a guess when he received the Pope's order, but this also spawned many problems. Since Nicola Flamel is very likely to become an angel on this pathway with more powerful than sequence 1, closer to godhood, then what about the other angel of the thief pathway? Where did Amon go? Has he been killed by Nicola Flamel?
Confirming Nicolas Valerie's current state is both a task the Pope entrusted to him and a divine revelation from the Lord.
Clearly, the Lord harbors some doubts about Amon's current state, and the outcome of this matter may even influence some of the Lord's future inclinations and actions. The Cardinal Archbishop of the Storm Church constantly recalled various materials related to ancient times that he had obtained from within the Church, as well as a copy of information about Amon and Tingen City in recent years that the Pope had personally given him a few days ago. Tingen City mysteriously appeared 200 or 300 years ago, a new angel of the seer pathway, and in this city closely connected with the Night Church,
a large number of peculiar oil paintings appeared, suspected of being manipulated by high-sequence beyonders of the seer pathway. For a long time before, battles at the high-sequence level of the seer pathway were constantly staged in various countries and cities. Although they did not cause too much impact, the Church internally suspects that these events involving the power of high-ranking beings are closely related to the three sequence ones of the seer pathway. It's suspected to be a chase for the position of a god. Chasing, traps, attacks, and counterattacks, the struggle between high sequences, sequence ones, is inevitable and unavoidable. Sequence ones of the same pathway are naturally hostile to each other, and someone will inevitably fall or have their position lowered. And this may be decided in a very short time, or it may be like the situation within the seer pathway, lasting for a very, very long time. But at this moment, under this circumstance, the Lord issued a divine revelation to test the state of this sequence one of the seer pathway in Tingen City.
Has that battle involving the sequence contention already ended? No, the current situation cannot yet indicate this.
In fact, under such circumstances, confirming Amon's state is more effective than confirming Nicholas Valerie's state. Even if the battle between sequence ones has ended, the victor may not directly absorb that extraordinary characteristic to reach the level above sequence 1, below true God. This extraordinary characteristic extracted from another angel's body can be sealed and preserved, or it can be made into a corresponding mystical item. It doesn't necessarily have to be consumed on the spot.
The victor's state cannot truly reflect the essence.
And as an angel of the seer pathway who has survived from ancient times to the present, the probability of being killed and completely falling is too low. High-ranking beings always have various strange ways to survive in some incomprehensible state, and the high-ranking beings of the seer pathway are known for their weirdness, making it difficult to completely eradicate them. As long as Amon's actions are clear, or if one can glimpse the current state of this offspring of the ancient sun god, then it will be easy to show what the Lord is concerned about, and what the result will ultimately be. The only problem is that the angel who has survived from ancient times, a born mythical creature, is even more difficult to fathom than Nicholas Valerie. Nicholas Valerie at least has a regular place to appear. Where to find Amon? On the way to Khoi University in a carriage with the Beyonders of the Artisan Church, the Cardinal Archbishop of the Storm Church looked at his temporary companion who had been silent and seemed to have no intention of speaking, thought for a while, and asked, "The Artisan Church doesn't seem to have ever established a church in Tingen. Is it because that one refused?" The astrologer of the Artisan Church twitched his brow, raised his head and glanced at the believer of the tyrant in front of him, and his mouth twitched, seemingly reluctant to speak, but his expression revealed a lot. This astrologer thought about the situation of his own church and gave up the option of not speaking. Okay, this is not a big secret. Look, the Storm Church and the Night Church probably guessed it. Not long ago, the headquarters of the Artisan Church in Intis also sent instructions to the branch of the Artisan Church in Loen to investigate the connection between Miskatonic University and Tingen City, and asked the investigators to secretly take a look at the current state of Tingen City. Obviously, the church is suspecting something. This astrologer was not aware that the battle between sequence ones of the seer pathway had already begun and ended in Trier, Intis, so he could not fathom what exactly the church wanted to investigate. As the deacon rotating in Hehe City in recent years, and also the closest to Tingen, this astrologer was completely forced into the position. Although if this matter is done well, perhaps his name will appear on the shortlist of candidates for the church to push open the door of divinity, he still feels acid in his stomach and wants to vomit in some corner. This city is really strange, especially for Beyonders with high spirituality. It reveals strangeness everywhere. Every time I come here, just walking on the street gives people an extremely uncomfortable feeling. Yes. The astrologer had nothing to hide from the Storm Church's Cardinal Archbishop's question, so he could only nod slowly, trying to ignore those gazes outside the carriage that seemed to be observing and probing, but as long as one went to observe, there would be no problems revealed. The church has also been discussing internally why this is the case, and their Lord, except for 200 years ago, when Tingen University and Khoi University began to gradually show their abilities in mechanics, craftsmanship, and construction, only then did they issue a divine revelation, and have never done anything else about it. We have been trying to contact the city government. The bishop of the Backland Archdiocese personally went to discuss this matter with His Majesty the King of Loen at the time. Although His Majesty the King agreed, the Tingen city government still refused the church forces to station there. Ignoring the king's order, if Nicholas Valery hadn't instructed them, they would never have believed that a city government would dare to do such a thing, violating the order of the Augustus family, which is the royal family and in a ruling position within the Kingdom of Loen. The Cardinal Archbishop of the Storm Church was silent. Obviously, why the artisan church was not allowed to build several churches in Tingen was also an extremely troubling question for him, one for which he could not find an answer. Because of faith conflicts. Just like the Lord and the eternal blazing sun, and the God of knowledge and wisdom. The artisan-scholar pathway is not adjacent to the seer pathway. Or is it simply unwilling to let the artisan steal the anchor point belonging to this angel of the seer pathway? But there are also churches of the Night and Storm Church here. Although according to the internal information of the church, the Lord's Church in Tingen City is also in a state of disconnection. It does not respond to any internal church matters on weekdays, only occasionally showing up to indicate that the church is still active, neither missing nor being abolished. If these two guesses are not valid, then Tingen obviously has no reason to refuse the establishment of the artisan church. Tingen and Khoi Universities advocate freedom of religious belief and do not restrict anyone from believing in the God of artisans. Had Nicholas Flamel already killed Amon? What connection did the abnormalities in Tingen City have with Miskatonic University? What exactly did this angel want to do? Too many mysteries swirled around this city. The ambiguous behavior of the high-level members of the two major churches, the close connection between the Night Church and Tingen City, and the tacit consent of the Augustus family all shrouded this city in a great deal of mystical color. The Cardinal Bishop of the Storm Church often sighed, closing his eyes as he waited for the carriage to drive towards Khoi University.
Perhaps there would be some answers to be found?
Events proved that he was right. After seeing those missing official and unofficial beyonders at Khoi University, he did indeed obtain answers to some of his questions, but this was immediately followed by even more questions. At Khoi University, the Cardinal Bishop of the Storm Church and the astrologer of the Artisan Church did indeed see the clergymen who had disappeared from their churches. Moreover, it wasn't just those who had disappeared from their churches, but also beyonders from the eternal blazing sun, the Earth Mother, the God of knowledge and wisdom, and even the Moses ascetics and some other secret organizations were here. These beyonders, whether they were official beyonders, beyonders from secret organizations, or wild beyonders, were of varying sequences and ages. There were Sequence 5 mid-sequence powerhouses, as well as Sequence 8 and Sequence 9 low-sequence beyonders. There were old men who appeared to be over 50, with graying temples, and there were young men in their 20s and 30s who looked to be in their prime. There were males and females, and they were all gathered in a classroom, silently and quietly writing something down with pens and paper. It was a somewhat oppressive silence. It felt as if the shells of these people were still alive in the classroom, but their souls had been gone for some time. Because these people did some not-so-good things, they must accept a little punishment, the leader who brought the two official beyonders to look for people said with a smile. The Cardinal Bishop of the Storm Church remained silent, while the astrologer of the Artisan Church looked bewildered. They waited outside the lecture hall for a while until the teacher on the podium, who looked unusually ordinary, left the classroom. Only then did the others in the classroom get up in 2s and 3s and walk out. Each of them didn't seem to be hungry or thirsty, nor had they suffered any material abuse, but they had obviously suffered spiritual torment. This wasn't even the feeling of a mental puncture by an interrogator, but pure, spiritual torment. Living people, slightly dead. Oh, except for that group of bookworms from the Church of the God of Knowledge and Wisdom. When the Beander belonging to the Storm Church saw the Cardinal Bishop of the Church, he was stunned for a moment, and then his eyes filled with tears. He looked like a pitiful child who had finally seen his parents visiting him in prison. The most uptack new uptack small uptack say uptack in uptack first uptack hair. Your Excellency Evans. This favored of the Storm Church wanted to give his aide a bear hug to express his mental torment of the past month, but he was picked up by the other party like a little chicken taken away. The Cardinal Bishop nodded to the astrologer beside him and, under the smiling gaze of the guide, took the person away first, preparing to find a quiet place to talk. The astrologer of the artisan church also saw the joy in the eyes of the clergymen of his church when they saw him.
Well, they looked fine, but they didn't seem to have any desire to live.
What exactly happened? After obtaining the consent of the guide, the cardinal bishop of the Storm Church took the person away directly, but did not leave Khoi University. He just found a corner, controlling the wind around him and creating a spiritual wall to prevent the sound from escaping. This favored of the Storm Church, who had been missing for more than a month, immediately told everything he had encountered in the past month. With the presence of a high-ranking member of the church to rescue him, the favored of the Storm Church, who had been subjected to high-intensity mental torment for nearly a month, really looked like he was about to break. Apart from the initial steam train, Nicholas Flamel's appearance, the true state of Miskatonic University, and so on, the most surprising thing was. You mean, you've been receiving training and assessment in mysticism at Khoi University for the past month? Yes, they said, since you've made a mistake, then you have to accept a little punishment. They received professional training in mysticism and combat classes, memorized and recorded a large number of various cases, and constructed ritual magic that conformed to their own church. This favored of the Storm Church, who had been missing for more than a month, felt like the sky had fallen. Although, as a punisher, being able to read books in peace, without having to be busy, and without any danger to his life was what he had always hoped for, but when he really did it, and there were a series of indicators such as assessments, he thought that it was better to fight with the heretics. He had a very difficult time this month. Every day he saw various ritual magic symbols and mystical symbols, saw portraits of werewolves and vampires, and saw various bloody and non-bloody cases. All he wanted to do was vomit. Apart from the fact that the food here was not bad, there was really nothing else that he liked. "Bishop, can I leave with you?" the favored of the Storm Church asked so earnestly. In his opinion, since the high-level members of the church could come here to find him in person, that strange university should also back down. The Storm Church was a church that served a true God. The church had a large number of sealed items and angel saints. Even if that university behaved strangely, it was impossible for it to directly oppose the church forces that had orthodoxy and believed in a true God. The cardinal bishop of the Storm Church pondered for a while, but slowly said, "No, Conches, you stay here." Wolf Conches, the favored of the Storm Church, was stunned for a moment. "The Lord gives us revelation." The cardinal bishop of the Storm Church said, "We need to find out the relationship between Tingen City, Miskatonic University, and Nicholas Flamel's current state. This is a task given by God, an honor, and also an opportunity for you. An opportunity for promotion, an opportunity to cross the hierarchy, to receive the Lord's attention, to receive the Lord's grace, to hear the Lord's praise." Wolf Conches was stunned there, repeating blankly, "The Lord's attention, the Lord's grace, the Lord's praise." That's right. The cardinal bishop hammered his left chest with his right fist. "The storm is with us. May the storm protect you." After contacting the clergy of their respective churches, both the cardinal archbishop of the Storm Church and the astrologer of the artisan church evidently obtained a great deal of information they hadn't had before. Among this information, the close connection between Miskatonic University and Tingen, the appearance of Nicholas Valery in Miskatonic University, and the recent influx of people from both the northern and southern continents into Miskatonic University were all things they had previously suspected, and were now confirmed. Some of it, however, raised even more questions. What exactly does Nicholas Valery want to do? Impart knowledge. As a Sequence 1 angel of the seer pathway with an unknown origin, what he's doing just doesn't seem right no matter how you look at it.
Why would Nicholas Valery engage in such an unprofitable endeavor?
What could he possibly gain? Similarly to the cardinal archbishop of the Storm Church's approach, the astrologer of the artisan church also intended to use this opportunity to probe the seemingly bottomless ocean that was Tingen, to see what indescribable dangers were hidden within. This was both a danger and an opportunity, the two clergy members of the orthodox God's churches thought in unison. As they left Khoi University without taking anyone with them, the faculty and staff of the school revealed enigmatic smiles from the shadows, watching the departing figures in the rented carriages. Behind them, countless spiritual threads faintly drifted towards the sky, seemingly connecting to the highest dome. "Looks like it went smoothly," Yes, it really does look like it went smoothly. The departure of the official Beyonders did not trigger any abnormal manifestations. The countless eyes that seemed to exist only in fiction withdrew their gazes after they left Tingen. Every uninhabited corner of the bustling city seemed deathly silent. One puppet string after another, seemingly connected to the sky, descended from the highest dome, manipulating the entire city, staging a vivid tableau of life on this city stage. This is a city where life and death resonate, a city of hope, and also a city of the dead. Marionettes form families and companies, engaging in various labors, playing countless diverse roles. This, too, is a miracle. The surface campus of Miskatonic University will be split off and implanted into the real world. Tingen University, this part is to provide a rapid language learning environment for students whose language proficiency is not up to par. This includes, but is not limited to, Ancient Hermes, Giant Language, Elvish, and other language species that can leverage the power of nature. The university itself has some majors that overlap with the inner campus, which is Miskatonic University, including the School of Medicine, School of Biology, School of Agriculture, School of Natural Sciences. In contrast to the situation at Tingen University, Khoi University provides an opportunity for official Beyonders to further their studies. The three orthodox churches of the Loen Kingdom, the Nighthawks, the Punishers, and the not-so-strong Machinery Hive, cultivate their own churches Beyonders. The vast majority of their philosophies are instilled from childhood, or they are exposed to the extraordinary world midway through because they have signed corresponding confidentiality agreements, and have come into contact with things related to mysticism, and eventually become Beyonders. This group of people's research and understanding of mysticism is uneven. Low to mid-sequence Beyonders, or those cultivated by the Church, although they have received orthodox mystical education, and are generally stronger than wild Beyonders in many aspects such as mystical taboos and restrictions, they still cannot form a specific system. The establishment of Tingen University is for the newcomers of Miskatonic University, and the establishment of Khoi University is for the official Beyonders and investigators to more professionally fight against evil gods, deal with pollution, and resist filth and depravity. The reason why Owen Lumian would create two universities instead of merging them into one naturally stems in part from Tang's suggestion. Splitting them apart makes it easier to distinguish between the two. The latter is for the Church, for the investigators who truly delve into this world and explore the dirty truth hidden behind the filth, to provide training and cultivation. And after 300 years of precipitation, most of the knowledge in this world has been sorted into more specific frameworks and systems. This is what a system, as a creation of knowledge, can do. It itself has supercomputing power and is more inclined to mystical AI. Statistics, planning, integration, and correction are just a matter of time for it. As long as the Lord of Storm's people can dig out this information from it and show a certain cooperative tendency, then it shows that Khoi University, that is, Miskatonic University itself, will become a semi-official organization cooperating with official Beyonders, not limited to the Night Church. Although the process was a bit provocative, Tang didn't mind what form it would take as long as the final goal could be achieved. After the Cardinal Archbishop of the Storm Church and the astrologer of the Artisan Church left Tingen, Tang focused his attention on the spirit world area corresponding to Tingen. As a city built 400 to 500 years ago, Tingen itself has corresponding, complete historical records in the fog of history that correspond to it. In the spirit world, according to the interaction of all spirits around, the spirit world coordinates corresponding to Tingen also have a corresponding block. Originally, this could not become the main part of the ritual for a seer to advance. But Nicholas Valery is the time worm who has already accommodated the second sequence one uniqueness, the King of Angels of this pathway. The Tingen of 300 years ago is essentially different from the Tingen of today. 300 years ago, Tingen had more living people than dead people, and significantly more than marionettes. That was the end of the Fourth Epoch, the Epoch of the Gods, and the beginning of the Fifth Epoch, the Iron Epoch. And now, marionettes occupy a dominant position. Rather than saying that this is a city belonging to the living, it is better to say that it is a city belonging to marionettes. As early as during Tang's ancient scholar advancement ritual, Nicholas Valery had been stealing the corresponding changes from the spirit world coordinates of Tingen, so that the spirit world area corresponding to this city did not undergo too many changes due to the rapid increase in the number of marionettes. In other words, the concepts and information generated in the area corresponding to the spirit world coordinates of Tingen today can mostly only point to the Tingen of 300 years ago, pointing to that period of history at the end of the Fourth Epoch and the beginning of the Fifth Epoch. Since that is the spirit world coordinates of 300 years ago, then what does it have to do with the spirit world 300 years later? This is a bug. Discovering loopholes in the rules and making good use of the errors within is the most basic quality of a time worm, a king of angels of the seer pathway. Cheating the rules has always been the forte of time worms. The Sequence 1 advancement ritual has been prepared accordingly.
Miskatonic University, the top floor of the school library.
Tang Bifan took out several items from the system warehouse. These were several books that, by their mere existence, distorted their surroundings with uncontrolled power. Just seeing them made one's whole body turn cold. Simple touch could kill, and perceiving the knowledge within would lead to true loss of control, turning one into an indescribable being. Among them, the most typical was still the open double-angle bracket Necronomicon close double-angle bracket. The most famous magic book in the Cthulhu mythos. And the other books were called open double-angle bracket the Book of Ibn close double-angle bracket. Before Zoth Amog, Yog Sothoth, and Cthulhu came from the stars, Ubosathla already dwelt in the steaming swamps of the nascent earth. Legends forgotten by mankind, sinister and terrifying myths. This is a grand compilation of evil and profound spells, rituals, and ceremonies. Open double-angle bracket the water god Sethiate close double-angle bracket. Nameless existence, your time has come. We are chosen by you personally. Through your spells and magic, through your dreams and enchantments, we know you will come, to serve you and rush forth, for our beloved master, the Knight of Cthulhu, slumbering in the green depths. Open double-angle bracket the Relia text close double-angle bracket. In the name of the land of Iha Nigle beneath the sea and its inhabitants, praise to the one who rules all, in the name of the Kish seal and all who obey this seal. In the name of the gate to Waiha Enthle and all who use this gate. In the name of the one who has walked and the one who will come, praise to the one who dwells beyond the gate. In the name of the one who must come. The 4 magic books stacked together were the rewards for completing system side quests. Side quest. Establish a secret organization, phase 4. Your organization already has a certain amount of talent, what? You're forcibly using potions to cultivate talent. No, I won't reprimand you. After all, just like the name you chose, the real Miskatonic University attracts a large number of talents every year to come and study, and then sends a portion of them into the tomb or mental hospital. So, now you have a group of talents that are not very useful. The next task is the most crucial part of the entire secret organization. Please expand the influence of Miskatonic. Whether it's occultism, science, or theology, archaeology, everything will serve the name itself. This university will become synonymous with all knowledge. A miracle where world knowledge and thought burst forth and converge.
A small suggestion: innovation has influence, task reward depends on influence.
Side quest achievement: Night of Peace completed gained the recognition of the Church of the Night. Side quest achievement: Miracle completed, phase 1 within the scope of the whole world. More than 1,000 rational beings deeply felt the greatness of Miskatonic University itself. Next phase. Within the scope of the whole world, more than 5,000 rational beings deeply felt the greatness of Miskatonic University itself. Side quest achievement: Angel completed. As the most symbolically occult Miskatonic University, it always needs some extraordinary people who possess miracles and legends to act as a facade. Side quest achievement: Lurker completed. In the situation of being famous, there will always be people who want to know what secrets are hidden in the calm deep sea. This is both the danger you will face and an opportunity for you. Side quest achievement: Deep Sea uncompleted gained the recognition of the Church of the Storm. Side quest achievement: Initiator uncompleted gained the recognition of the Church of the Craftsman. Ah, sorry host, there is no such task. The system nimbly erased the last task involving the Church of the Craftsman. Tang, unconcerned, fiddled with the 4 items from the system side quest reward, the surprise gift pack. It seems you really hate the people of the craftsmen, even preventing them from opening churches in Tingen. The system hummed and hawed. This system will definitely find a chance to devour their god. Host, how about we just go to Intis? With the host sequence 2 status, it shouldn't be a problem to take down the seer's corresponding sequence 2 Beander, it will be, he. No way, Tang said, the craftsman god is still useful. Moreover, judging from the current situation, rather than shaking the craftsman's authority and disturbing the barrier of the starry sky, it's better to catch the hidden sage and devour him first. What do you think? The craftsman god is in the starry sky. Before completely overturning the arrangement of this god's position, ignoring is the best choice. Antagonizing would only create problems. Of course, the system wouldn't refuse. In its eyes, both the craftsman and the hidden sage were hostile targets, and it would have to devour them sooner or later. Tang secretly sized up the system's reaction, gaining a certain understanding of the current state of the knowledge more. Adjusting the position and state of the 4 Cthulhu magic books that served as the main body of the ritual, Tang stood in the corner of the library, took out a speck of dust as bright as a shimmering pearl, and sprinkled it on the 4 items floating in the air, which possessed terrible contaminating properties. The open double angle bracket Necronomicon close double angle bracket, open double angle bracket The Book of Ibn close double angle bracket and other magic books only possess the corresponding status and power. What's important is not their form of existence, but the knowledge recorded within. But that is a part of the knowledge more, things that have been contaminated by the source quality, and have obtained partial characteristics and distortions. With the assistance of precise ritual magic, and by changing all ritual magic and prayer objects to correspond to the content in the books, then this ritual magic will directly point to these carriers, indirectly allowing the knowledge more to respond accordingly. They will automatically respond to the guidance of correct ritual magic, allowing those who use ritual magic to obtain miracles like the orthodox churches seeking help from gods. As the representative of knowledge as power, such ritual magic will not have any shortcomings. As long as it is designed reasonably enough, as long as there are corresponding occult records on these 4 magic books, then it will be able to be satisfied. But this kind of ritual magic obviously has a certain degree of contamination. This is the contamination inherent in the knowledge of the knowledge more. Low and mid-sequence Beyonders, using similar ritual magic with high intensity in a short period of time, will be uncontrollably and passively contaminated by the source quality. The source quality itself is a huge source of contamination. Any way of approaching similar things will lead to unavoidable tragic results. Sometimes this contamination is not controllable by the source quality itself, just like humans do not want to harm life, but you just step on it lightly, and countless lives will be lost because of it. The difference in status and power leads to all of this happening. After dealing with these 4 magical books used as props for pointing and ritual responses, Tang wiped his hands, removing the debris originating from the Euclidean space derivatives, and threw the remaining residue into the system warehouse for later use. The pollution of the wilderness of primordial knowledge, plus a bit of pollution from Euclidean space, well, that's about complete. The power of pollution belonging to the primordial quality, whether in terms of rank or influence, is naturally quite high and strong. For ordinary extraordinary individuals, even angels and gods, there are actually no good ways to avoid this level of hidden pollution. Just like the ancient sun god, he once tried to split off the dark angel Sosriel in order to isolate the pollution from the Chaos Sea, but this firewall itself was also eroded by the Chaos Sea, initially awakening within him. However, if similar things of the same rank are used to block it, the probability of preventing similar pollution will be much higher. Just like Klein manipulating the Saphira Castle, which can purify pollution and eliminate spiritual influences, this is also a deeper level of pollution, covering another lower level of pollution, or blocking the specific manifestations of the same level of pollution. Just as the Saphira Castle can prevent the pollution of the Chaos Sea and the River of Eternal Darkness, the state and rank of Euclidean space itself are also close to the state and rank of the primordial quality. Similar methods can also suppress those in the middle and low sequences, because of the traces of pollution produced by frequent use of similar ritual magic. However, this method of avoiding pollution relies on the underlying rules of mutual devouring and repulsion between different sequences and different pathways. It is nothing more than replacing, suffering the hidden pollution of the wilderness of knowledge, with, suffering the hidden pollution of Euclidean space. But I think they shouldn't mind. Anyway, he is not a bad person. If they are polluted, then they are polluted. At least he will not casually bestow those people, causing their forms to gradually distort into his appearance. The manifestation of Euclidean space pollution has never been considered active. Slightly polluted individuals, as long as the master of this space does not think of actively influencing them, will at most always feel that there is something more around them, showing some characteristics in terms of observation. This characteristic, in specific mystical terms, is, your inspiration has been improved, and the probability of seeing things you cannot understand will also be significantly increased. This seems quite investigator-like. System. So, it is the bad guy. It can't be said that. If extraordinary individuals of the seer or knowledge keeper pathways use similar ritual magic, the degree of pollution they suffer should outweigh the pollution of Euclidean space. After all, it is the apex of the seer pathway and the knowledge keeper pathway, with an extraordinary influence on these two pathways. This is not something difficult to understand. Will the wilderness of knowledge use this ability to further break through the limitations set by the celestial worthy of the West Continent and influence areas outside the West Continent? Is this one of the reasons why the wilderness of knowledge sent him these magic books? If my expectations are not the same as the expectations of the wilderness of knowledge, how will the wilderness of knowledge infiltrate the real world? Or is this destiny? The sequence 1 of the supreme pathway is called destiny. Are all these destined events that can only influence the process but not change the result? Is this also a kind of influence of future on past? After checking the ritual magic embedded in Euclidean space and Miskatonic University, which can respond to the correct ritual magic pointing worldwide, Tang left the top floor of the library and returned to his residence. Next, what needs to be considered as the final step? Before the established fate arrives, the last, and most critical, advancement of the seer pathway. Sequence 1, Mystical Attendant. Seer Pathway, Sequence 1, Mystical Attendant. Main material. Either of the two extraordinary characteristics in the body of the ancestor of the Antigonus family, half a fool, or an extraordinary characteristic of the mystical attendant, shrouded in gray fog above the Saphira castle. Supplementary materials. 9 different spiritual world specialties. Ritual. Establish a town composed purely of marionettes, and design their own destiny trajectory for each marionette, so that they can deduce a sufficiently real picture of life through their interactions, and a corresponding area will be born in the spiritual world. 9 different spiritual world specialties have been collected, and the ritual has been laid out in Tingen City. Due to the errors brought about by the Worm of Time, the spiritual world coordinates corresponding to Tingen City are still in an undeveloped, chaotic, and disorderly area. Next, Nicholas Flamel only needs to perform a large-scale theft again, actively creating corresponding errors, and use his own and the monocle's display in terms of rank, symbol, and power to completely collapse and annihilate this area that only corresponds to the spiritual world coordinates of Tingen City 300 years ago. The complex information of Tingen City today will directly flood into the spiritual world, creating the corresponding area and completing the advancement ritual of the mystical attendant. Before this, Tang took over the spiritual threads of all the marionettes in Tingen City, which was not difficult for Tang, who was already Sequence 2. And the most dangerous point of Sequence 2 advancing to Sequence 1, that is, the mental split caused by too many marionettes, was perfectly repaired by the bionic marionette module. Just say whether it is my marionette or not. As for my marionettes having their own brains, what does it have to do with them becoming a component of my ritual? Only the last thing remains. Go to the main peak of the Hornassus Mountains, the original site of the Land of Night, the city of the undead, and meet the half a fool. And this is equivalent to all the Sequence 1 extraordinary characteristics of the seer pathway that can be clearly obtained at present, as well as the uniqueness that is crucial to this pathway's path to becoming a god, falling into Tang's hands. All the gifts of fate have been marked with a price, and at least I know what the chips placed on the balance are. The uniqueness of the death pathway, an extraordinary characteristic of Sequence 1 of the Death Pathway, or the god worshipped by the God of War Church. The God of War Bardhair will surely fall, and there will be no hope for the resurrection of the God of Death Salinger. This is destiny, and it is fate. Advance to Sequence 1 Mystical Attendant, and at the same time accommodate the last, and most critical, item, at that time. Let Nicholas replace my position and complete a weakened version of the Godhood ritual, thereby allowing him to completely replace Amon's position in the Marauder pathway and grasp the Marauder pathway. Door, Marauder, Seer, 2 of the 3 pathways are now in his hands. Fifth Epoch, November 513. Within a year, Tang had continuously advanced, leaping from Sequence 4 to Sequence 2. Now, on the verge of advancing to Sequence 1, he entered a misty town, accompanied by Nicholas Flamel, the Sequence 1-time worm. The crimson moon in the sky was obscured by mist. This town, thoroughly concealed by the night goddess and erased from reality, was deathly silent. But in the next instant, the mist thinned slightly, and the moonlight reflected from the crimson full moon fell upon the town. The only church in the misty town silently opened its doors, and from within emerged many figures, dressed in tattered clothes, with stiff and slow faces, like puppets that had been poorly maintained after being made, appearing disheveled and broken. They moved stiffly and mechanically, seemingly following some predetermined instruction, filling the entire misty town. They were also communicating with each other, each secret puppet deliberately acting, trying to recreate the living state of the former inhabitants. But their stiff, mechanical movements, lacking essential maintenance, did not portray a true picture of life. Some of these secret puppets were scantily clad, some had their intestines spilling from torn bellies, the dried-up stomachs filled with maggots that had also been dead for a long time. Some had empty eye sockets, and some had exposed skin that had rotted away, revealing deep wounds where one could see the faint throbbing of internal organs, still alive, according to the connections in the mystical sense. They were not living people, but secret puppets of the secret master, secret puppets of this town, secret puppets of that Antigonus family ancestor, the one called Half-Fool. But these secret puppets' current mechanical and stiff conversations, this kind of performance, would only make people feel that they had entered a town themed around horror. Forget about a picture of life, anyone would turn around and leave after one glance, no matter how hard Antigonus tried to perform. The latest chapters are first released at. If you want to practice your courage in the future, this is a good choice. Tang and Nicholas walked among the secret puppets. Their entry did not attract the attention of any of the secret puppets. Through the authority of Euclidean space, Tang and Nicholas, who had transitioned from observable to unobservable states, would only be pierced by ordinary mystical attacks unless they encountered more powerful mystical detection, and would not suffer any harm. This was one of the authorities of the Sequence 2 Feet Observer. The transition between observable and unobservable symbolized whether the material basis of the observed object's existence in the real world could be perceived and understood. If it cannot be observed, then naturally it is a non-existent thing. Since it does not exist, then what can harm them? So, what is the relationship between the high-dimensional overseer and me? Tang complained to Nicholas while walking past those secret puppets, who had a lot of room for improvement, and strode towards the dark church in the town. Hornassus, Flegre. Hornassus, Flegre. Hornassus, Flegre. Inside the church, not all of the secret puppets had left to enter the secret puppet town outside. Here, there were still secret puppets hanging from the ceiling, like dried bacon. They hung in midair, constantly shaking their bodies, and a near-whispered voice echoed within the seemingly not-so-spacious church. Dark corners seemed to hide something, those things possessed a certain activity, and also had a creepy danger. Tang glanced at it, and seeing that it was nothing too rare, he directly ignored these little guys. After becoming half-fool, it was not surprising to find some monsters born near Antigonus, whose consciousness of celestial worthy was further awakening, due to the Angel King's loss of control. After entering the church, he and Nicholas did not control their spirit-body threads. Being in an unobservable state, they were also not subject to the manipulation of the spirit-body threads. Even if it was a full moon outside, and Antigonus's power as a cryptic servant was maximized, he could not penetrate this layer of defense without the help of equal-level power. If it is an existence of equal level, such as the preliminary revival of the Lord of the Mysteries, the celestial worthy should be able to do it. After all, this is the ability of sequence 2, but it is blessed by Euclidean space. As long as the Saphira Castle can provide some assistance, this extraordinary method will be difficult to work. While personally feeling some of the characteristics of the observer sequence itself, after passing the statue of the Mother of the Sky, seeing a stone wall behind the statue, he and Nicholas moved forward again, unhesitatingly passing through that layer of stone wall, continuing to penetrate inward. The world inside the door and the world outside the door, this is where the difference appeared. The cold darkness, the meaning of evil and madness, filled this hall located deep in the church. The ground in the hall was still empty, but countless corpses were also hanging in midair. They were more numerous, more complete, more like people, rather than secret puppets whose manufacturing process was not perfect and had not been given more careful care. They all lowered their heads, revealing the whites of their eyes, and they chanted together. Hornassus, Phlegre. One slippery tentacle after another had countless evil patterns. That was the manifestation of the complete mythical creature form caused by one crazy spirit worm after another. Just seeing it would permanently plunge people into madness, just touching it would bring incomprehensible, unspeakable death. These tentacles extended from the deeper depths of the hall, and there was an ancient, huge stone chair, inlaid with dim gold and gems. On it was a strange, huddled vortex of worms that could not be described in any language. That was Antigonus himself, that was the mad ancestor of the Antigonus family. The descendant who once destroyed the demon wolf Phlegre, inherited some of the relics of the demon wolf Phlegre, and became the Sequence 1 angel king of the seer pathway. Nicholas appeared in the dark hall. His spirit body thread suddenly floated towards the countless slippery tentacles, but the next moment, the angel king of the thief pathway slightly raised his hand, and he stole the spirit body threads of all the other secret puppets. In an instant, the secret puppets above their heads crashed down, scattering all over the ground. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.